Only the left lane is getting through this area. This is also closed the ramp to Leslie and the ramp to the 404. It pays to open a CIBC Smart account. Earn $300 and pay no monthly fee for up to 12 months.
Open a CIBC Smart account.
Conditions apply.
The CIBC is smart and they open smart accounts. Smart people. Stupid money.
Right now, we're seeing mostly cloudy skies. There are some sunshine here in downtown Toronto, which is a good thing on this very gloomy day. But they will be few and far between over the next 2.5 hours. Matter of fact, I do think even the sunset scheduled for about 8:15 will likely just be a dreary one. Overnight, though, we will see some clearer skies. Tomorrow's going to be a much better day. Not only are we going to see the temperature,
tomorrow's going to be a much better day.
Warmer, and we're also going to see some skies. Tomorrow night, though, we'll see a mixed bag, which is partly cloudy skies at a low temperature of 3 degrees. Right now at Pearson, it's 9 degrees. Overnight low.
American cigarettes with illegal currency in Germany.
News time 4:43. Muslims around the world have begun celebrating Ramadan amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
Made on Mohawk territory with a barcode because it belongs to us.
Followed by lavish meals and evening get-togethers. But this year, many are confined to their homes. Travel is heavily restricted, and public venues like parks, malls, and even mosques are shuttered. A key element of Ramadan is charity, with the fast partly intended to cultivate empathy for the needy. But many countries have imposed bans on communal meals, forcing charities to organize home deliveries instead. I'm Sarah Bassett. This is 680 News.
Not delivering nothing to me.
The economic impact of COVID-19 has drastically affected food banks across Canada. Many only have enough food for the next 2 weeks. But when you donate to Food Banks Canada, every dollar can be stretched further to help our fellow Canadians, your neighbors who are in need. It's time to step up to the plate and donate. Please give what you can.
Still older than me, still gonna cry it out. And I'll give a damn, and I don't want to look at this no more.
Reorganize the basement and feng shui your living room. Now it's time to get outside and tackle the garden. During this time, it's time to get the soil and resources you need. So lessmess.ca has made it easier and safer to get topsoil, mulch, compost, sand, and stone delivered to your home with the Less Mess Enviro Bag. Not only do you get nutrient-rich soil in a sealed Less Mess Enviro Bag, but lessmess.ca offers quick, no-contact delivery to keep you feeling safe and secure. Visit lessmess.ca and get into your garden.
This is All News Radio, 680 News.
It is 9 degrees, raining. Good afternoon.
City of Trees.
Broadcast Center in downtown Toronto. I'm Caitlin Lee. Here are the top stories this hour. Schools will be shuttered until at least the end of next month. Education Minister Stephen Lecce confirming the closure will stay in place until May 31st on advice from health officials. He said there's no need to extend the school year, though. Lived out of pandemic pay, paramedics and respiratory therapists, as well as midwives, frustrated after seeing their glaring omission from a $4 an hour boost for those in the front lines of the COVID-19 crisis. And a star-studded list of Canadian entertainers will be zooming into your TV screens tonight. It's all for the Stronger Together special.
Can I just mute this when you fucking play that?
TV.
You're going to tell it to me twice in the same hour, are you?
Now time for 680 Sports from Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Here's Brent Gunning.
The NBA will allow teams to play their practices on Friday. Friends have these
Got that motor on my state, just like you, elevated like a top rate. It's full of hate. If you really think that you better than the devil, then you gotta get a separate fate. When I rip off my shit, people that just hear me get it fall back. When you get fucking ungrumpy and that, and then you get clapped the crack, and then you don't know what the fuck happened. You're just like flat. You don't even cheat. Pass my identity. Which be the DERE, LICT, MCO, the FWE. Fuck on me, stay hating on me because I am better than fucking competitor. I say whatever you bitches can lay the fuck down. My crew is tough, just like some other some cool stuff. What are you saying? You're buffing your name off in your rhymes. Fuck around once more, and you're gonna find that I shit the nightclub in your spine. Murder is mine is something to love because it makes me driven to lust. And when I do murder, you trust me, that it's just because I want you much.
I just came in from outside. Black blood, really? Holy fuck. That was gross. That was gross. Now you're dead. Whatever you were, you're gone. I literally just came in from outside. Where the fuck did that come from?
Yo, come along, follow the map, my controller who will hold you like a stiff dick, will work you like a flick trick. I'm crazy back to shit, it's getting ill sick, and deck out the burbs, nigga, it's the big nicks. Coming fat from the vats of black wax, in fact, I cramp stacks of acts upon the shelves, so fans can help themselves, I prove my record sales. Move along, cause yo, there ain't no pausing, I'm causing catastrophe. I hate to be the one coming after the black dick dastardly. I heat them up even in winter. I spin it for Guinness, I'm eating pussies for dinner, but just remember, I ain't no downtown clown, I run the mellow ass sounds, the real shit, boy, straight from the dead ground.
I'm wasting the damn marker, I know, right?
5 for 5, wanted dead or alive. Really soft potatoes with sour cream and chops. No
what,
job if I was
you
and catch a dose of my
sure,
sweet
I'll
technique. Straight from Suicide Street.
Listen.
I work a beat like a cop. Trash at pawn shops, frontin' city trends, cause I'm giving niggas speed knots. Yeah, there ain't no frontin' on the fact. I say the daily in my habitat, like a Venus fly trap. I run the J-Bass sounds, I'm putting good shit down, so check shorty, straight from the dead ground.
This will take a whole hour, right? We keep running these good stories, but I'm not.
Dirty beans, manage with Papa Hash. Digger, stash, know what I'm saying? I'm out the race like stank on sewage. If your record ain't out by now, you fucking blew it. I ain't here to welcome faggot imitations. I smother brothers and watch them pay for mess suffocation. I got shorties in irreversible comas, while styles wreck trash like super vets doing donuts. Till I'm posted at the Barbary Coast where queens be on the scenes in less than apple scenes. I do my tracks like country blacks, ain't fat, doper than a sack of crack, crushing it back, no question. I'm putting the rest in your notions of coming west. Without your bulletproof vest. On the sets, I do no less than my best to let you know your assets was dropped on the rocket set. Check, stay out the park if you're scared of the talk. Understand, I'll be around, straight from the dead ground.
Straight from the dead ground.
Under pressure, under pressure, under pressure.
Lifetime fever.
I got a lifetime fever. No, gotta still, still fever. I got a lifetime fever. No, gotta still fever. I got a lifetime fever. No, gotta still fever. 38 revolver flow. 38 revolver flow. 38 revolver flow is hard to trace. Whoa.
Whip it real hard. In the kitchen, whipping up that freaking to the real hard. Bitch, I hustle real hard. Bitch, you hustle real smart. Bitch, you hustle once a week. Bitch, I flipping Ricky. Wow. Whip it real hard. In the kitchen, whipping up that freaking to the real hard. Bitch, I hustle real hard. Bitch, you hustle real smart. Bitch, you hustle once a week. Bitch, I'm flipping Rick Ross every day. Grinding hard, grinding big, you grinding small. 38 revolver blows. I'm watching fucking kill them all. I'll be down to kill a dog. Burn him with my fucking blow. Once he dead, go find this bitch. Stop flirting with his fucking hoe. Working with this fucking hoe. I'll be up my fucking shit. You'll let the revolver take 6 shots. You said they need a clip.
Light range.
For the majority of the GTA, we'll start to see the wave disappear as the storm system, which extends from our area all the way to the state of Tennessee, continues to rise.
So it can't. Chicago to Ontario and Tennessee, guys.
Real cheese, no shot.
Pretty much carbon copy, but we'll end up seeing some more sunshine, and then the latter half of the evening, we could end up seeing some rain that'll continue into Wednesday and Thursday. On both of those days, we'll end up seeing a high temperature of about 10 degrees. It's 9 degrees right now at Pearson. Our overnight low is 3 degrees.
This extended forecast is brought to you by Dynamic Funds. In times like these, we could all use advice, especially when it comes to investing. Advice matters now more than ever. Speak to a financial advisor and learn more at dynamic.ca/advice. Always new command lock tick.
Killer, murder, killer.
I ain't fucking with no cops. They don't like us getting involved with none of that political shit. Look, some of us feel we
can't think about that right now.
Y'all said me never did I want you. Oh Lord, me tell you.
Fingers, my real dad.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Hey, can I adopt somebody as my dad against their will? I'm gonna stick him. I have to pay him an allowance.
Yo, take him out, bring him out dead. Westwood, hit him in the head. 1 gun, 2 gun, 3 gun, 4, 5, it's all about crime.
Stay gold, the picture says.
Yo, murder, pulled out, turned out. Them Westwood, put your blanket them, boy, me, murder. We never have peace.
Oh, you can't quite see it. Where the fuck is it? The bunch is in the damn way. Too many damn bugs. What's wrong with you? Where's so many fucking bugs? I'm prepared for my fucking house to be a jail cell, or a bomb shelter, or apparently a biohazard shelter for my recycling vehicle.
We just choose it. So burn the flag, cause I'm on that rebel shit. The level kick 10 times on the ass. Yeah, pass and you drag. To the north, to the south, to the east, to the west. Good, go on. Yeah, what? Fall it down. Let the bridges fall it down. DJ Westwood, that's fucking crazy. I turn the diamond fight for kicks. Hit the Westwood.
Dropped it.
DJ's on the mix. That ain't all that hip. Don't skip the dial. My niggas that foul. Now you can't get the chance to get new music in that style. He's crashing, put in black and blue rules and cruising crisis. No wonder I tune that radio show. Jazz, balls get slammed to the girl. Wow. Ooh, it hurts so bad when I smile. Me and the honest from the proud. It's my face and you know now. The break is falling down. Falling down. And the break is falling down. Westwood is crazy. Motherfuckers up red. Cha. Now it's time to get live. When Westwood's the best. Come on. Feel the vibrations from the station. The pumping frustrations in the nation. What? The bridge is falling down. They falling down. The bridge is falling down.
That was really smart. I would have gathered up every piece of artwork I ever found, discarded in the city of Toronto. Just open up some kind of gallery or something.
When it's a full moon, he get a chill in his mind. Heavy losing his mind, looking a shower and nickel plate at night. The blood clot warrior, roster and imposter. You sweat Westwood and do not know why. Going up your sweat, sweat.
Rogers and Telus are tied in Ontario at 8, but those differences are larger than they seem.
1 or 2 problems per 100 could be considered significant. Given the limited time frame, we're looking like at 48 hours from when they took the survey. And the number of subscribers, that's represented by this sample is quite large. So, that 1 point, the one extra problem that's being experienced by,
problems.
that mass of customers, does make a difference.
JD Power found wireless patterns were relatively unchanged from a year earlier, led by texting, app usage, and a distant third, phone calls. The survey was done just before the mid-March surge in pandemic-related measures, but Chung sees a takeaway.
Great opportunity for carriers to continue demonstrating and reinforcing their commitments on the reliability.
A little subtle racial, not racist exactly, but racial.
Rogers is the parent of this station. In the business center,
sees a takeaway.
If you're hearing this, you're staying in and keeping your distance.
Just don't die. In the crazy like
You couldn't quite label it racist, but it's racial. I'll be wanting you to start 60
I do this for my SG riders, cheesy low right behind the scene, hit it behind me, sipping on the gin. Them hoes stay down when it's sticky, all my niggas riding with me. I be feeling trippy, flowing in the wind. The shorty wanna talk for the night, for a talk for this life. I feel I never want this shit to end. For the dough, my nigga. For the dough, my nigga. Never want this shit to end. Do this for my SG riders, cheesy low right behind the scene, hit it behind me, sipping on the gin. Them hoes stay down when it's sticky, all my niggas riding with me. I be feeling trippy, flowing in the wind. The shorty wanna talk for the night, for a talk for this life. I feel I never want this shit to end. For the dough,
I got shot like this. Free my nigga HSA shot with the black and practice and 6 sex. I'm well, cause my closest niggas, they move left. Same ones I used to post on my block and protect. Now what's next? All I see is money in my vision. Only I paint pictures when I'm spitting, me and them niggas different. We can never be the same niggas since trying to blame it on niggas like what a shame. In the Gucci belt, niggas know I'm back in my name, it's gonna hurt. When I'm 9 grades, connect to your brain and 2 shots to be better if you stay in your lane. I'm gonna put a dough, my niggas ain't any dough.
Now, emergency crews responding to a massive fire in Whitchurch, Stouffville. Flames jumping from a garden center can be seen all across the 401.
All public schools in Ontario will remain closed until at least May 31st. Education Minister Stephen Lecce says he still doesn't know when students will go back to class.
The union representing Peel Paramedics is speaking up after they were left out of the province's pandemic pay increase for frontline workers. And the mayor answering your questions right here on 680 News. We have the highlights from an exclusive interview with John Tory.
The NFL draft is in the books, but these Saints are still busy signing a new quarterback and re-signing another. Sports at 15. Only
Why can't you guys pick a time of day to do that
investors
shit?
prepare for more
About
earnings.
noon.
And Canada's
How
largest
about
railways
noon,
among those
12:30, and
set to
1?
report.
They're all three.
Business at
Shit,
27.
like, why can't you make a segment?
Time 5:01.
Time for traffic and weather together one strictly first. Just Christine Langos.
Thank you, Cam. This report is brought to you by MyMuskokaCottages.com. On the westbound 401 west of Stevenson, the right lane is blocked with a collision. Emergency crews are on scene. Doesn't look like it's causing a big delay at this time. Just something to watch out for. And it's on one collision on the major routes, thank goodness. The northbound Allen ramp to westbound 401 collectors also closed because of construction, so that might be causing a bit of a distraction for you, but otherwise no big problems on the 401 across the GTA with the drive. It's running pretty smoothly. On the westbound Britannia, the ramp to eastbound 407 is closed for construction, and eastbound 407 from east of Yonge to east of the 404 down to one lane only. The one left lane is open, and that too is for repairs. Also closed the eastbound 407 ramp to Leslie and the ramp to the 404. On the northbound 404 from the 407 to north of Highway 7, we have construction here blocking the HOV lane as well as the 3 left lanes, and Bloomington still closed from Woodbine to Warden. It's for an ongoing fire investigation. $60 million worth of luxury cottages await your arrival. Muskoka realtor Bob Clark is excited to showcase these fabulous lakefront properties. Visit mymuskokacottages.com. Your next report is at 5:11. And now with the forecast, here is Jason Fraser.
Right now, we continue to see some light showers move across the city of Toronto. Those of us north, though, are still seeing just either some drizzle or just mostly cloudy skies. Later on tonight, everybody will just see partly cloudy skies and a low temperature in the lower end of the single digits. Right now at Pearson, it is 9 degrees. Overnight low is 3 degrees.
680 News Time, 5:03.
Happening now, a significant visual distraction for drivers. That's what York Regional Police are saying. With a massive fire at a garden center in Whitchurch, Stouffville. Several callers from the 680 newsroom are reporting thick clouds of black smoke that can be seen off of Highway 401.
Fire crews were called for reports of a large structure fire on Bloomington Road in the Woodbine and Warden Avenue area. There are no reports of injuries. Police say Bloomington Road is closed between Woodbine and Warden.
You're listening to 680 News at 5:03. Education Minister Stephen Lecce says publicly funded schools in Ontario will stay closed until at least May 31st. The government says the decision was made based on advice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health. 680's Zahara Hashimi reports. I'm sorry, parents, but you might be stuck with your kids for a little while longer. Education Minister Stephen Lecce has announced that all publicly funded schools will remain closed until at least May 31st. He says the decision is based off advice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and they will only reopen once it's deemed safe to return to a classroom.
We're going to ensure that safety remains our paramount priority, which is why we're providing an additional month extension for us to work with Dr. Williams and the community table to make sure we get this right, to make sure that ultimately the students and staff, when they return, can do so with absolute confidence it is safe to do so.
During his afternoon briefing, Lecce stressed that all students will be able to finish the school year online. The government says the extension is meant to give officials time to review updated modeling data. I'm Zahara Hashimi.
680 News Time, 5:04. A glaring omission. Three groups actually of frontline workers are wondering why they were left out of the pandemic pay boost announced yesterday by Doug Ford. 680's Michelle Mackey joins us live with the latest, including the rising number of COVID-19 recoveries in Ontario. Michelle.
Caitlin, the union representing Peel Paramedics is speaking out. President Dave Wakely says paramedics were left out of the temporary pandemic pay increase and hopes the exclusion was nothing more than an oversight.
If that's not the case, then it kind of feels like a level of disrespect being paid to my members and the work that they're doing.
Wakely also notes respiratory therapists and midwives are left out of qualifying staff. I've been in touch with the Premier's office regarding this matter and am expecting a response shortly.
Remember, if a midwife comes to your house, you don't have to go to the hospital.
Outlines qualified healthcare personnel as staff working in long-term care homes, corrections institutions, supportive housing, and some staff in hospitals, to name a few. Meantime, Ontario is reporting 24 more deaths resulting from COVID-19.
The supportive housing include these jackasses
additional recoveries and 437 new cases, the lowest daily increase in over a week. Reporting live, I'm Michelle Mackey.
John Tory says there is a possibility that a second wave of COVID-19 hits Toronto, and that city residents need to be ready for it. The mayor answered your COVID-19 questions this morning live right here on 680 News. 680 Stuart McGinn has more.
We've been promised it will be slow and steady, recognizing doing too much all at once could increase our chances of getting a second wave of COVID-19. John Tory also talked about news affecting the championship defending Toronto Raptors, as the NBA is starting to allow teams to gear up
and use their practice facilities. We're at work on that. If you have a whole bunch of people suddenly in their practice facility or anywhere else, this goes against what we're still trying to do. Tory also called on landlords for flexibility, with more concerns from renters about their financial situations as we approach May 1st. I'm Stuart McGinn.
680 News Time, 5:06. Toronto has opened 11 new facilities and secured more than 1,200 hotel rooms to house people who would normally use this city's shelter system. The city is also working on helping people in the shelter system gain access to permanent homes with Toronto Community Housing. 73 people have been moved out of the shelter system and into permanent homes so far. Multiple shelters in the city have already experienced outbreaks of COVID-19.
You're listening to 680 News. They're calling it the biggest multi-platform broadcast event in Canadian history. Stronger Together airs tonight in support of COVID.
I do this for my SG riders, Jeezy Loki right behind the scene, get it behind me, sipping on the gin. Them hoes stay down when it's sticky, all my niggas ready with me, I be feeling trippy, flowing in the wind. The shorty wanna talk for the night, for a talk for this life. I feel I never want this shit to end. For the dope, my nigga. For the dope, my nigga, never want this shit to end. Do this for my SG riders, Jeezy Loki right behind the scene, get it behind me, sipping on the gin. Them hoes stay down when it's sticky, all my niggas ready with me, I be feeling trippy, flowing in the wind. The shorty wanna talk for the night, for a talk for this life. I feel I never want this shit to end. For the dope,
Canadian Red Cross. I'm Simon Bennett.
680 News Time, 5:08. Tim Hortons is honoring the 22 lives that were lost in the tragic shooting in Nova Scotia. The Nova Scotia Strong Donut is now on sale. 100% of proceeds are being donated to the Canadian Red Cross Stronger Together Nova Scotia Fund.
What does the Red Cross have to
Sidney
do with any of
Crosby
this?
and Nathan McKinnon have partnered with Tim Hortons for the launch.
Donate it to the fire hall that got shot. They got holes.
Proceeds will go to a Canadian Red Cross fund supporting the families impacted.
Let's show Nova Scotians how all Canadians stand with them.
The donut goes on sale across Canada on Wednesday.
Why not now?
Volunteers across Canada are using 3D printers to produce personal protective equipment and other essential supplies. Organizers say it's an effort that could have a lasting impact even after the COVID-19 crisis passes. These makers are volunteering their expertise, time, and tools to produce gear used on the front lines of the fight against the pandemic, drawing on open source designs and creating their own. After going through testing, the products have been approved for use in hospitals, long-term care homes, and other frontline facilities. The federal government has called on companies and organizations that don't typically make medical supplies to help and join the cause.
680 News Time, 5:09. Labatt Brewery is doing its part to help during the pandemic. Labatt has announced it will provide 223,000 cans of drinking water to the city to supply the Toronto Drop-In Network and its Streets to Home program. Mayor John Tory commended Labatt's involvement, saying, "I want to thank Labatt Breweries of Canada for their commitment to donate cans of drinking water to help our most vulnerable citizens impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic." Labatt says this will allow service providers to distribute drinks along with takeaway meals while maintaining public health guidelines for appropriate physical distancing.
You're listening to 680 News.
This is 680 News.
And time now for the 680 News gas price update. Empro predicts the price of gas will not change at midnight, holding at 82.9 cents a liter at most GTA stations. In the 60 seconds, traffic and weather together on the ones.
680 News Time, 5:10.
My name is Aaron Waxman, and in times of uncertainty, we can take solace in the
Only the real weather report.
Welcome to Environment Canada's Weather Service. Bienvenue au service météorologique d'Environnement Canada. For the City of Toronto, press 1. For York, Durham, for the forecast for the Environment Canada forecast issued at 3:30 p.m. Sunday, April 26th, for tonight, Monday, and Monday night. City of Toronto, for tonight, cloudy with 40% chance of showers, becoming partly cloudy before morning. Wind northeast, 40 kilometers per hour, gusting
It was raining at
60,
3:30.
diminishing to 20, gusting to 40 this evening, then becoming light before morning. Low +5 for Monday, mainly sunny. High 13, UV index 6 for high. For Monday night, increasing cloudiness, 40% chance of showers before morning. Low +3. Extended forecast, Tuesday, cloudy with 40% chance of showers. High 11 for
It's gonna fucking rain for 3 days.
area. The other lanes are closed for repairs. The eastbound 407 ramps to Leslie and to the 404 also closed. Plumbing, electrical, furnace, water damage problems in your home? Call AGM Renovations for an express service and safeguarded visit. Go to agmbasements.com. Your next report is at 5:21. And now with the forecast, here's Jason Fraser.
Well, right now we're seeing mostly cloudy skies everywhere, and even here in downtown Toronto, we are seeing some light rain showers continue to fall. Later on this evening, that's when we'll start to see the rain finally exit our region. It'll move from west to east, and then we'll see temperatures dipping down to the lower end of the single digits. Now, tomorrow, some of us are going to start out with some cloudy skies, but everyone should at some point see the sun, and we'll see a high temperature tomorrow, right around 12 degrees. Right now at Pearson, it's 12 degrees. Overnight low.
No mention of all that rain.
680 Houston, 513.
Motherfucker.
Actor Brad Pitt portrayed Dr. Anthony Fauci in a second at-home episode of Saturday Night Live.
Dr. Anthony Fauci had jumped up.
Whoa, wow.
Put your hope I can get up inside. I always been a real nigga and I never was high. I used to work a 9 to 5, but it's better than grind. Getting high off the weed I smoke, I gotta keep the heat close. You know I need my throat. Shit, I seen before niggas to leave it go. I told my nigga Teasy go, yeah, we can sneak some go. For the door, for the door, my nigga, I'ma have to get it in. For the door, I'm about to go and get it in. I do this for my SG, riding cheesy, don't keep right behind the scene, get it behind me, sipping on the gin. Them hoes stay down when it's sticky, all my niggas riding with me. I be feeling trippy, blowing in the wind. The shorty wanna talk for the night, for a talk for this life. I feel I never want the shit to end. For the dope, my nigga, never want the shit to end. Do this for my SG, riding cheesy, don't keep right behind the scene, get it behind me, sipping on the gin. Them hoes stay down when it's sticky, all my niggas riding with me. I be feeling trippy, blowing in the wind. The shorty wanna fuck for the night, pour a cup for this life. I feel I never want the shit to end.
I'm gonna start like this. My nigga Ox, blunt fingers for niggas who speak the clock. Man, I'm back on my bullshit. Never really gave a fuck. I'm in 2 feet, and I never shoot a play for front. Stop like they mess, but they talk like a ladies bunch. Laughing at your team like who the fuck about the Brady bunch. They don't see for the team, I got the latest stuff. So I'm about to team, I'm not trying to get the paper. Feel like two stone thunder, I got. It's the truth, he ain't the truth, man. He under disguise. I crossed down, but still under disguise. I ain't stepped in how long, can't you see the bags under my eyes? Straight how I ain't living yet. Used to rush a pack a day. Never smoked a cigarette, but now I smoke a pack a day. From the 6th grade, I've been stopping with this game. Get wet like a nigga that been trapping in the rain. I feel like old dog, the way I'm trafficking the game. No love, no heart, nigga. All I feel is pain, man. Niggas that been working my work, got no fuck. Think I'm finna die, cause the niggas got no luck. When I was ready to ride, the niggas never showed up. Waving my hands at the devil on my shoulder. Said I wouldn't stop and I got shot with a gold gun. But it's bitch in the streets, nigga, so what? Yup, I'm in the streets, nigga, so what? Round my connect, whenever the dope slows up. Yup, I'm in the streets, nigga, so what? Round my connect, whenever the dope slows up.
My nigga, I'ma have to get it in. For the door, I'm about to go and get it in. I do this for my SG, riding cheesy, don't keep right behind the scene, get it behind me, sipping on the gin. Them hoes stay down when it's sticky, all my niggas riding with me. I be feeling trippy, blowing in the wind. The shorty wanna fuck for the night, pour a cup for this life. I feel I never want the shit to end. For the dope, my nigga. For the dope, my nigga, never want the shit to end. Do this for my SG, riding cheesy, don't keep right behind the scene, get it behind me, sipping on the gin. Them hoes stay down when it's sticky, all my niggas riding with me. I be feeling trippy, blowing in the wind. The shorty wanna fuck for the night, pour a cup for this life. I feel I never want the shit to end. For the dope, I'm in the minds and in the friendly skies, and I'm thinking dope, and I'm getting pussy, pushing niggas in the center rising. I've been about it, I bet your body. I need like that Bugatti, I got the kind of thing I'm putting right through your mommy. Pulling shooters by me, I'm suited in new Versace and Sierra
therapy, I call it my click on my core pocket. You figure the nigga slipping, I'm gripping, using the shot. I'm ready to make my money, you nigga, I'm with a hobby. This shorty wanna ride it. The 40 got me body, I ain't stopping till I'm in the Benz, balling in the Audi. Bitches call a nigga poppy, I go all in for the profit. You need it, I can get it. If you want it, then I got it. Got it, dirty bitch, and make a nigga harder than a rocket. I'm playing the bitch, I'm feeling like I'm harder with the bracket. I don't give a fuck like a bitch, gotta be making my dough. I'm picking the middle, so get them all up, my niggas to get the dough. So my nigga, I might have to get it in. For the door, I'm about to go and get it in. I do this for my SG riders, GZ Loki right behind the scene, hit it behind me, sipping on the gin. Them hoes stay down when it's sticky, all my niggas ready with me, I be feeling trippy, flowing in the wind. The shorty wanna talk for the night, for a talk for this life. I feel I never want this shit to end. For the dough, my nigga. For the dough, my nigga. Never want this shit to end. Do this for my SG riders, GZ Loki right behind the scene, hit it behind me, sipping on the gin. Them hoes stay down when it's sticky, all my niggas ready with me, I be feeling trippy, flowing in the wind. The shorty wanna fuck for the night, pour a cup for this life. I feel I never want this shit to end. For the dough, dough.
Oh, this is so interesting. This is so interesting. So where do I start? I might as well start up here. The breaching of Versailles. So what I want to read is here. Yeah, these are mixed blood hairs, mixed blood skin. They don't get along. They don't get along at all. They're razor blades. Anyway, the breaching of Versailles. In the meantime, Hitler pursued with unflagging energy his program of building up the armed services and procuring arms for them. The army was ordered to treble its numerical strength. There's an apostrophe missing. You'll be fucking kid. I'll let it slide. I guess I didn't, did I? Its numerical strength from 100,000 to 300,000 by October 1st, 1934. 34. That's very early on. And in April of that year, General Ludwig Beck, chief of the general staff, was given to understand that by April 1st of the following year, the Fuhrer would openly decree conscription and publicly repudiate the military restrictions of the Versailles Treaty. Until then, the utmost secrecy must be observed. Goebbels was admonished never to allow the words quote-unquote general staff to appear in the press, since Versailles forbade the very existence of this organization. The annual official rank list of the German army ceased to be published after 1932 so that its swollen lists of officers would not give the game away to foreign intelligence. The game. No, you thought you came up with that word because it had to do with drugs, eh? General Keitel, chairman of the Working Committee of the Reich, Defense Council, admonished his aides as early as May 22nd, 1933, quote, no document must be lost, since otherwise enemy propaganda will make use of it. Oh, never throw away a letter, never write a letter, and never discard a letter. Matters communicated orally cannot be proven. They can be denied. Remember, this is 1934. The Navy, too, was warned to keep its mouth shut. More apostrophes. Did you just refuse to use apostrophes, bro? The Navy, too, was warned to keep its mouth shut. In June 1934, Raeder had a long conversation with Hitler and noted down Führer's instructions. No mention must be made of a displacement of 25 to 26,000 tons, but only of improved 10,000-ton ships. The Führer demands complete secrecy on the construction of the U-boats. For the Navy had commenced the construction of 2 battle cruisers of 26,000 tons, 16,000 tons above the Versailles limit, which would eventually be known as the Scharnhorst and the Gneisenau. Submarines, the building of which Versailles had prohibited, had been secretly constructed in Finland, Holland, and Spain. Really? During the German Republic, and recently Raeder had stored the frames and parts of a dozen of them at Kiel. When he saw Hitler in November 1934, he asked permission to assemble 6 of them by, quote, the time of the critical situation in the first quarter of 1935. First quarter, business, economics. 1935, end quote. Obviously, he too knew what Hitler planned to do at that time. But the Fuhrer merely replied that, quote, he would tell me when the situation demanded that the assembly should commence. Because he's a control freak. At this meeting, Raeder also pointed out that the new shipbuilding program, not to mention the tripling of naval personnel, would take more money than he had available. Really? But Hitler told him not to worry. Quote, in case of need, he will get Dr. Ley to put 120 to 150 million from the labor front at the disposal of the Navy, as the money would still benefit the workers. End quote. Thus, the dues of the German workers were to finance the naval program. So the Germans were kind of used to being fucked around with their wages and dues anyway. By the time we got to the Marshall Plan last night, 6-hour video, but it's a GO train, I think. Could be Via, but it's most likely GO. I don't think there is Via Rail. Is it Via Rail? Goring, too, was busy those first 2 years establishing the Air Force. As Minister of Aviation, supposedly civil aviation, he put the manufacturers to work designing warplanes. Training of military pilots began immediately under the convenient camouflage of the League for Air Sports. A visitor to the Ruhr and Rhineland industrial areas in those days might have been struck by the intense activity of the armament works, especially those of Krupp, chief German gunmakers for 3/4 of a century, and I.G. Farben, the great chemical trust. Although Krupp had been, pay very close attention to the next about 2 minutes here. Although Krupp had been forbidden by the Allies to continue in the armament business after 1919, the company had really not been idle. As Krupp would boast in 1942, when the German armies occupied most of Europe, quote, the basic principle of armament and turret design for tanks had already been worked out in 1926. Of the guns being used in 1939 to 41, the most important ones were already fully complete in 1933, end quote. Farben scientists had saved Germany from early disaster in the First World War by the invention of a process to make synthetic nitrates from air after the country's normal supply of nitrates from Chile was cut off by the British blockade. Now, under Hitler, the Trust set out to make Germany self-sufficient, remember those words? Self-sufficient in 2 materials without which modern war could not be fought. Gasoline and rubber, both of which had to be imported. The problem of making synthetic gasoline from coal had actually been solved by the company scientists in the mid-20s. After 1933, the Nazi government gave I.G. Farben the go-ahead with orders to raise its synthetic oil production to 300,000 tons a year by 1937, no apostrophe. By that time, the company had also discovered how to make synthetic rubber from coal and other products of which Germany had a sufficiency, and the first of 4 plants was set up at Schkopau for large what you doing, man? Schkopau for large-scale production of Buna, as the artificial rubber became known. So that's just a made-up word. By the beginning of 1934, plans were approved by the Working Committee of the Reich Defense Council for the mobilization of some 240,000 plants for war orders. I'm not sure if that's a typo or what 240. That's a quarter. That many factories making rubber. And by the end of that year, rearmament in all its phases, apostrophe, had become so massive it was obvious that it could no longer be concealed from the suspicious and uneasy powers of Versailles. So I guess I'll just keep going. Okay, I didn't read this far. These powers, led by Great Britain, had been flirting with the idea of recognizing a fait accompli, a finished act. That is, German rearmament, which was not nearly so secret as Hitler supposed. They would concede Hitler complete arms equality in return for Germany's joining in a general European settlement, which would include an Eastern Locarno, and thus provide the Eastern countries, especially Russia, Poland, and Czechoslovakia. Oh, we got their money up here, don't we? With the I think so. Maybe I'm wrong. We got Yugoslavia. We got a few of them. With the same security which the Western nations enjoyed under the Locarno Treaty, and of course furnished Germany with the same guarantees of security, which they weren't interested in. In May of 1934, Sir John Simon, the British Foreign Secretary, who was to be a good forerunner of Neville Chamberlain in his inability to comprehend the mind of Adolf Hitler, I can comprehend the mind of Adolf Hitler, actually proposed equality of armaments to Germany. The French sharply rejected such an idea. But the proposals for a general settlement, including equality of armaments and an Eastern Locarno, were renewed jointly by the British
and French governments early in February 1935. The month before, on January 13th, the inhabitants of the Saar had voted overwhelmingly, remember that? We read about that last night, 477,000 to 48,000, that's 10 to 1, to return their little coal-rich territory to the Reich, and Hitler had taken the occasion to publicly proclaim that Germany had no further territorial claims on France, which meant the abandoning of German claims on Alsace and Lorraine. Alsace. In the atmosphere of optimism and goodwill, 2 words there, which the peaceful return of the Tsar and Hitler's remarks engendered, the Anglo-French proposals were formally presented to Hitler at the beginning of February 1935. Hitler's reply of February 14th was somewhat vague, and from his viewpoint, understandably so. He welcomed the plan which would leave Germany free to rearm in the open, but he was evasive on Germany's willingness to sign an Eastern Locarno that would be tying his hands in the main area where, as he had always preached, Germany's Lebensraum lay. I don't know what that is. Might not Britain be detached in this matter from France, which, with its apostrophe mutual assistance pacts with Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Romania, was more interested in Eastern security. Hitler must have thought so, for in his cautious reply, he suggested that bilateral discussions precede general talks and invited the British to come to Berlin for preliminary discussions. Sir John Simon readily agreed, and a meeting was arranged for March 6th in Berlin. 2 days before that date, the publication of a British white paper, where have we heard that term, caused a great deal of simulated anger in the Wilhelmstrasse. Actually, the white paper struck most foreign observers in Berlin as a sober observation of Germany's clandestine rearmament, the acceleration of which had moved Britain to a modest increase of her own. But Hitler was reported furious with it. Neurath informed Simon on the very eve of his departure for Berlin that the Führer had a cold and the talks would have to be postponed. Whether he had a cold or not, Hitler certainly had a brainstorm. It would be embarrassing to have Simon and Eden around if he transformed it into a bold act. He thought he had found a pretext for dealing the Versailles Diktat a mortal blow. Blah, 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 blah.
Keeping a close eye on Google parent Alphabet, it's expected to be a focus for investors this week as the
Sidewalk Labs
are expected Tuesday. And this comes following reports that the company will cut its marketing budget and is implementing a hiring freeze for full-time and contract employees. At the Business Center, I'm Carl Garnish.
As a homeowner,
whether he had a cold or not, Hitler certainly had a brain. Blah, blah, blah. He thought he had found a pretext for dealing the Versailles Diktat a mortal blow. The French government had just introduced a bill extending military service from 18 months to 2 years. Remember, it doesn't matter what they've been doing for the longest time. They can change it like that. It's 2 years because of the shortage of youth born during the First World War. Really? On March 10th, Hitler sent up a trial balloon. I'm not sure if that means literally. To test the mettle of the Allies. The accommodating Ward Price was called in and given an interview with Göring, who told him officially what all the world knew, that Germany had a military air force. Hitler confidently awaited the reaction in London to this unilateral abrogation of Versailles. It was just what he expected. Sir John Simon told the Commons that he still counted on going to Berlin. On Saturday, March 16th, most of Hitler's surprises were reserved for Saturdays. I wasn't aware of that. The Chancellor decreed a law establishing universal military service. Remember that universality of service? All right. And providing for a peacetime, I don't know what you call it in the U.S. In Canada, it's called universality of service. Universal military service and providing for a peacetime army of 12 corps and 36 divisions, roughly 500,000 men. That was the end of the military restrictions of Versailles, unless France and Britain took action. As Hitler had expected, they protested, but they did not act. Indeed, the British government hastened to ask whether Hitler would still receive its foreign secretary, apostrophe, a query which the dictator graciously answered in the affirmative. I'm not OCD, I'm autistic, I'm sure of it, because I should shut up and just read this to make it sound better. No, I have to point it out. Sunday, March 17th, was a day of rejoicing and celebration in Germany. The shackles of Versailles, symbol of Germany's defeat and humiliation, had been torn off.
List of healthcare workers who qualify for the province's temporary pandemic pay increase.
And a new donut at Tim Hortons is raising money for the families of the Nova Scotia shooting victims.
The NFL's busy weekend continues with undrafted free agents getting signed and changes Winston finds a new home. Sports at 45.
Disney's
All I'm doing here is reading it for you out loud because maybe it's hard to find the book, the words are fucked up. I'm picking out the exact sections I want you to know about.
Business at 56. 680 News Time, 531.
Afro
For traffic and weather together on the ones, here is Christine Langos.
This report
You know
is
there's
brought
black
to you by
Jews and white
Queensway
Muslims,
Hyundai.
right?
One problem on the major routes right now, aside from all the construction we have, westbound 401 west of Stevenson. The right lane is blocked because of a collision. We have emergency crews on scene, but no delay through this area, fortunately, because of all the
Still
light
got half
volume
an hour to
that I'm
kill?
spotting on the major routes. I'm just seeing
What a way to phrase
motorists
it,
just
eh?
fly by on all of our highways. Northbound on the 404 from the 407 to north of Highway 7. With construction here taking up the HOV lane as well as the 3 left lanes. A northbound Allen ramp to the westbound 401 collectors closed for construction. More construction on the 407, eastbound 407, east of Young to east of the 404. Only the left lane is getting through this area. The northbound Young and north and southbound Bayview ramps to eastbound 407 are closed. And the eastbound 407 ramps to Leslie and to the 404 are closed as well. Don't forget we have Bloomington closed, as you've been hearing, between Woodbine and Warden, and it's all for a fire investigation and cleanup. Buy with confidence at Queensway Hyundai, now offering purchase from Home Solutions, 6-month payment deferral, and concierge services. Here to service the community, visit queenswayhyundai.ca. Your next report at 5:41. Now with the forecast, here is Jason Fraser.
Now we're seeing lots of cloud cover across the GTA. Some of us are still seeing just some light rain showers move across our region, but this will slowly start to dissipate over the next couple of hours. Overnight, we'll see mostly cloudy
legs are
skies
full of
and
holes. I got
temperatures
holes
dipping
in my
down to
legs.
the lower end of the single digits. At Pearson right now, it's about 9 degrees. Our overnight low is 3 degrees.
680 News Time, 532.
A major announcement from Ontario's education minister. Schools are set to remain closed through the month of May.
Stephen Lecce stressed that all students will be able to finish the school year online and graduate if they're eligible. 680's Zahir Hashimi joins us with the latest. The Ford government announced that all public schools in Ontario will remain closed until at least May 31st. Education Minister Stephen Lecce says the decision is based on advice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health. Now, students can continue their classes online and will be able to graduate if they meet the criteria. And to the families who need it, Lecce stressed again that the government is giving out iPads.
We understand that in the virtual and distant
Don't try and sell us these iPads.
technology can be a really important aid,
Punch
and
you in
we
the
want
face and bring them back to,
mitigate
I don't know, where we bring them back to.
differential
I guess the police
experience.
station,
There's
I don't
some
know.
people
Everything else is
who have
fucking
access and those that
closed.
do not.
Lecce says the extension will give officials
Not
time
try
to
and
study
sell us these
updated
iPads.
modeling,
You're
and
not
that their
gonna
number
give me
one
money for it.
priority will always
You're a
be the
black guy.
safety of students. No word yet on when classes will be back in session, but
Oh,
he
if
says
you're returning
could
it,
be
he's
at
here.
some
I
point
found
this
it.
year.
It's
It all
different.
depends
Don't
on how the
fucking be stealing
pandemic
these things trying to
unfolds.
fucking
I'm
sell
Zahir
it.
Hashimi.
680 News Time, 5:34. York Regional Police say a massive fire has broke out at a garden center, causing a visual
Has broke
distraction
out.
for drivers. Fire crews responded to calls of a structure fire in Bloomington Road in the Woodbine and Warden area this afternoon. Several callers into the 680 newsroom have reported large clouds of black smoke that can be seen off of Highway 401. There are no reports of injuries. York Police say Bloomington Road is closed between Woodbine and Warden.
Yeah,
680 News Time, 534. Some positive news from the Ministry of Health today. Now reporting a total of 8,000 recoveries from COVID-19. 680's Michelle Mackey has more on the numbers, plus some healthcare workers are speaking out. Today were not included in the province's temporary pandemic pay increase, including paramedics.
The president of Peel Paramedic Union, Dave Wakely, says it isn't about the money, it's about the lack of acknowledgement, but notes their services will not stop.
Paramedics are always going to be there for people, and it's hitting more than an act of disrespect on behalf of the provincial government to make us stop doing our job.
A spokesperson for the health minister says in part, we're continuing to consult with our healthcare partners to address questions and determine who might meet the criteria for pandemic pay. Meantime, Ontario is reporting 437 new cases of COVID-19. The lowest daily increase in over a week, and today marks the first time there have been more reported recoveries than new cases. I'm Michelle Mackey.
The City of Toronto would like to remind residents to maintain physical distancing while this pandemic continues. 533 tickets have been issued since the beginning of the month, and yesterday the city received 21 complaints related to non-essential businesses staying open. According to a news release from the city, there are currently 4,798 cases of COVID-19 in Toronto. 274 people have died in the city, and they're still stressing. Only go out if you absolutely need to.
We carried it live on 680 News this morning, an exclusive interview with John Tory. The mayor
One for
answered your
10,000,
questions,
that's
including
not good.
just how long people will need to continue to work from home. 680's Drew begins everything you might have missed.
If you have a good work from home setup, the mayor says it might be a good idea to get comfortable.
I won't be surprised.
I'm comfortable,
if you say, well,
bro.
not everybody can suddenly pile back on the subway and go to
I'm
work
never
on the same
comfortable.
day.
I don't like
Answering
being
questions from
comfortable.
680 News listeners, John Tory said the city has no plans to increase fines for anyone not following physical distancing regulations.
We're not making any changes to it at the moment, and we just hope people don't get the ticket because they get it, that they're not supposed to be close to anybody else. Mayor.
Crucial to do everything we can to avoid a second wave of COVID-19, meaning there's no way anytime soon thousands can pile into Rogers Center to watch a Blue Jays game. I'm Stuart McGinn.
News time, 5:36. The OPP says they have no idea why there are people pretending to be police officers and stopping motorists to check their essential worker status during the pandemic. Wellington County OPP has released information about 2 suspects, including one who has already been arrested and charged. The OPP is advising the public that police are not conducting random traffic stops to check motorists' work status during the COVID-19 pandemic.
They're going to check you at work. We got a
If you
complaint
feel
that your
you are
business
being
is
stopped
open.
by someone impersonating a police officer and you fear for your safety, call 911 and provide your location.
Drive to the nearest police station. Don't stop for them under any
to
circumstance.
appear in a Canadian COVID-19 broadcast benefit tonight.
Fucking hell, they're like razor wire.
To donate.
News time, 5:38. Canada's Lap Brewery says it will produce and deliver 6 truckloads of 223,000 cans of drinking water.
Why not 240,000? Doesn't it come in 6 packs?
Cans of drinking water will be distributed equally between the Toronto Drop-In Network and its Streets to Home program. Labatt says the need for canned drinking water is a result of reduced opportunities.
See all those homeless
for those
people with the
who are
Labatt's
street
cans? They
involved or
will put the
experiencing
Labatt logo
to
on
access
it.
drinking
I'm
water.
just gonna say
Mayor
water.
John Tory says we know these challenging times call for extraordinary measures. We're grateful to
So I
our
wanted to
corporate
bring all the
partners
cans
for helping us
in.
deliver. The program
Cans
is
and
intended
industry
to
glass.
support
They
the
don't need
drinking
wine
water,
bottles,
such
you
as
fucking
donating
assholes.
100,000
They
bottles
pay
of hand
money to get rid of the
sanitizer
wine
during
bottles.
pandemic.
This is 680 News. Tim Hortons is launching a campaign to support those affected by the heartbreaking events in Nova Scotia. The Nova Scotia Strong Donut is now on sale in Nova Scotia, and 100% of proceeds are being donated to the Canadian Red Cross. Canadian hockey stars Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon have partnered up with Tim Hortons to help spread awareness.
As proud Nova Scotians, we are incredibly saddened by the tragedy that took place in our community. To show our support, we've partnered with Tim Hortons to give every Canadian a way to show theirs.
The donut goes on sale across Canada on Wednesday.
Amid mounting questions about the health of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, South Korean officials say Kim is alive and well. A Seoul-based website has published satellite images appearing to show a train believed to belong to Kim located on the east coast of the country.
An official from South Korea's presidential office has told ABC News there is no update from their previous assessment and that Seoul believes Kim is residing outside of the capital Pyongyang with AIDS in a normal state.
With
Kim was
AIDS.
last seen in public on April
Kim
11th.
Jong-un got
2 days
AIDS.
later, conspicuously missed his late
Oh, I know, there's a
grandfather
E,
Kim
A.
Il-sung's
I see
birthday
it.
celebrations. Julia McFarlane, ABC News at the Foreign Desk, London.
Now, the 680 News gas price update. Enpro says the price of the pump did not change at midnight, holding at 82.9 cents a liter at
74.9,
most GTA
75
stations. Traffic and
cents,
weather
right
is
here.
next.
680 News Time, 540.
We all have a part in this. And regardless if what you do is considered essential, or you simply need to
So,
pick up a
let's see
few
what else we can
essentials
find
for your family, getting you there is important to us. That's why at Toyota, we're taking the necessary safety measures to ensure our parts and service departments remain operational to keep you moving forward safely and reliably. Because if others depend on you, you can depend on us.
Contact your local Toyota dealer or visit shoptoyota.ca for more
The
information.
French government protested the looting of the country's art treasures, declaring that it was a violation of the Hague
The
Convention.
Scott Mission has been helping Toronto's hungry and homeless since 1941, and they really need your help, especially during these uncertain times.
And when one German art expert on Rosenberg's staff, a Herr Bunges, dared to call this to the attention of Goring, the fat one replied, "My dear Bunges, let me worry about that. I am the highest jurist in the state. It is my orders which are decisive, and you will act accordingly." And so, according to a report of Bunges, it is his only appearance in the history of the Third Reich, so far as the documents show. Those art objects collected at the Jeu de Paume, this game of something, which are to go into the Führer's possession, and those which the Reich Marshal claims for himself will be loaded into 2 railroad cars. Who's got railroad cars? Dictatorship leaders. Which will be attached to the Reich Marshal's special train to Berlin. Many more carloads followed, but that was not what I was looking for. So we're going to skip back to that later. Nazi terror in the conquered lands. On October 22nd, 1941, a French newspaper, Le Faire, published the following notice. Cowardly criminals in the pay of England and Moscow killed the Feldkommandant of Nantes on the morning of October 20th. Up to now, the assassins have not been arrested. As expiation for this crime, I have ordered, by the way, this is French, right? As expiation for this crime, I've ordered that 50 hostages be shot to begin with. 50 more hostages will be shot in case the guilty should not be arrested between now and October 23rd by midnight. That's the next day by midnight. This became a familiar notice in the pages of the newspapers or on red posters edged with black in France, Belgium, Holland, Norway, Poland, and Russia. Posters, eh? Posters. Where do you find posters? On phone poles. Who owns the phone poles? City of Toronto. Why? Because we had to make a military type decision as to who actually owned the goddamn poles, because nobody knew who some of them belonged to. Well, if you don't own it, you don't touch it, right? So we got random phone poles everywhere with weird wires on them. They don't tell us what's on there. I find weird equipment all the time. I'm not talking to air raid sirens. I know what those look like. Oh, yes, we do have them. They run on Mopar 318s, I think. So, were these posters? This became a familiar notice in the pages of the newspapers or on red posters edged with black in France, Belgium, Holland, they keep saying Holland, it's the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, and Russia. The proportion publicly proclaimed by the Germans was invariably 100 to 1. 100 hostages shot for every German killed. Though the taking of hostages was an ancient custom much indulged in, for instance, by the Romans, it had not been generally practiced in modern times except by the Germans in the First World War and by the British in India and in South Africa, Hindustan, by the way, and in South Africa during the Boer War. South Africa. Sega, where we play video games with your mind. Sega, Segregation A. Sega, the 12-gauge automatic street sweeper, the South African street sweeper. The South African street sweeper. I don't know how I made friends with Somalis. Maybe because I'm not an asshole. If they don't like you, you must have done something. Under Hitler, however, the German army carried it out on a large scale during the Second War. Second World War and by the British and South during the Boer War. Okay. Dozens of secret orders signed by General Keitel and lesser commanders were produced at Nuremberg, ordering the taking and shooting of hostages. Quote, "It is important," Keitel decreed on October 1st, 1941, that these should include well-known leading personalities or members of their families. And General von, this is when my people went through, and General von Stulpnagel, okay, hey, look at my name. The German commander in France a year later stressed that, quote, "the better known the hostages to be shot, the greater will be the deterrent effect on the perpetrators," end quote. In all, 29,660 French hostages were executed by the Germans during the war, and this figure did not include the 40,000 who, quote-unquote, died in French prisons. The figure for Poland was 8,000, and for Holland, some 2,000. Well, in Denmark, what became known as a system of, quote, "clearing murders," end quote, was substituted for the publicly proclaimed shooting of hostages. On Hitler's express orders, reprisals for the killing of Germans in Denmark were to be carried out in secret, quote, on the proportion of 5-1, end quote. Thus, the great Danish pastor, poet, playwright, Kaj Monk, one of the most beloved men in Scandinavia, was brutally murdered by the Germans, his body left on the road with a sign pinned to it. I'm going to read it. Quote, swine, you worked for Germany just the same, end quote. Of all the war crimes which he claimed he had to commit on the orders of Hitler, quote, the worst of all, end quote, General Keitel said on the stand at Nuremberg, stemmed from the Nacht- und Nebel-Erlass, quote, night and fog decree, end quote. This grotesque order, reserved for the unfortunate inhabitants of the conquered territories in the West, was issued by Hitler himself on December 7th, 1941. Its purpose, apostrophe, as the weird title indicates, was to seize persons, quote, endangering German security, end quote, who were not to be immediately executed, and make them vanish without a trace into the night and fog of the unknown in Germany. No information was to be given their families as to their fate, even when, as invariably occurred, it was merely a question of the place of burial in the Reich. On December 12, 1941, 5 days later, Keitel issued a directive explaining the Führer's orders. Quote, in principle, he said, the punishment for offenses committed against the German state is the death penalty, end quote. But if these offenses are punished with imprisonment, even with hard labor for life, this will be looked upon as a sign of weakness. Efficient intimidation can only be achieved either by capital punishment or by measures by which the relatives of the criminal and the population do not know his fate. The following February, Keitel enlarged on the night and fog decree. In cases where the death penalty was not meted out within 8 days of a person's arrest, the prisoners are to be transported to Germany secretly. These measures will have a deterrent effect because A, the prisoners will vanish without leaving a trace, B, no information may be given as to their whereabouts or their fate. The SD was given, not South Dakota. I'm very North American. I'm not U.S. I'm not. I went to Canadian school. The SD, I'll find out after. I'll notice. Was given charge of this macabre task. I feel so stupid not knowing what SD stands for right off the top of my head. Was given charge of this macabre, it's French, task, oh yes it is, and its, apostrophe, captured files are full of various orders pertaining to, quote-unquote, NN, for Nacht und Nebel, especially in regard to keeping the burial places of the victims strictly secret. How many Western Europeans disappeared into, quote-unquote, night and fog was never established at Nuremberg, but it appeared that few emerged from it alive. State Department, right?
In parts of their economies, while other states are seeing protests against governors who refuse to lift stay-at-home orders. Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer is one of those governors and says there are a number of things that need to happen for her to reopen her state.
We have to have robust testing. We have to have community tracing.
These hairs here,
a plan for isolation
that
for people
giveaway
that
in
do
South Africa, they know exactly what I am.
COVID-19 in the future.
Whitmer says until those are in place, her stay-at-home order is saving lives. Mark Remillard, ABC News.
I would love to see South Africa.
News at 5:49. Details are emerging of what the new normal will look like in Italy when the national lockdown due to COVID-19 outbreak begins to lift on May 4th. With safe social distancing now a requirement for restaurants and cafes, that will mean far fewer customers, more dining out fresco, and perhaps even plexiglass shields separating diners, as one Rome restaurant is already exploring.
This is nighttime over there already, right?
Horror at that proposal expressed by many on social media. No, that is totally unromantic. I'm not going out to eat with plastic in my face, she says.
Good, stay home, stupid.
Barriers are also being considered by some
that was simple,
beaches.
wasn't it?
All summer sports, including beach volleyball, are expected to be banned. Megan Williams, ABC News, Rome. An Ontario-based marketing company is offering to adopt a small business in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Marty Fisher is the president of Sherpa Marketing, the ones behind the Adopt a Business campaign. He says it comes from a place of understanding, having also felt the financial stress of the pandemic. So they decided to choose one business in the region to provide them with $25,000 worth of marketing services.
We're looking to, help small business. So, we're looking at people, with under $800,000 in top line revenue. So
just go to sherpamarketing.ca and fill out a form before May 8th, showing you suffered significant losses during the pandemic. Fisher says other companies are also offering to adopt a business too, and others that are interested should reach out to him. Feed on 570 News.
And British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be back to work tomorrow following his hospitalization from COVID-19. British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab, who has been acting for Johnson during his illness, says the Prime Minister has been taking part in meetings to prepare him for his return.
He's going to be back at work full-time, properly at the helm on Monday. And as you can imagine, with the Prime Minister, he's ready to go.
Johnson's return comes amid growing criticism of the government's handling of the coronavirus outbreak.
The handling of everything. They've mishandled this.
For traffic and weather together on the ones. Here is Christine Langos.
And this report is brought to you by GP Bikes. Some good news. Westbound 401 west of Stevenson. Problems have been cleared away. All lanes have been reopened. The only issue on the westbound 401 is the ramp from northbound Allen to westbound 401 collectors closed because of construction. Eastbound 401 wide open across the GTA. Don't forget we have this construction on the eastbound 407 from east of Young.
30 minutes to restart the video. I might only be gone 15 minutes.
Is getting to this area. The northbound Young and north and southbound Bayview ramps to eastbound 407 are closed, and the eastbound 407 ramps to Leslie and to the 404 are also closed. You'll find a minor delay northbound on the 404 from the 407 to north of Highway 7, and that's where the HOV lane is blocked, as well as the 3 left lanes. So at the end of this construction zone, you'll just be getting by in the right lane only. Again, it's just a minor delay because volume is very light on the major routes. And Bloomington still closed between Woodbine and Warden because of a fire investigation and cleanup. Zero HST sale plus up to 60% off. Open online and by phone for easy curbside pickup. Get your new motorcycle with finance rates as low as 0%. GPBikes.com, your power sports authority. Your next report is at 6:01.
Like not borrowing money at all.
Here's meteorologist Jason Fraser.
Well, Christine, we're continuing to see some light rain fall across the GTA. Those of us that are north, though, of downtown Toronto
I'm going to show with the motorcycle helmet on.
As the evening progresses, I can't rule out the possibility of another rain shower popping up in your neighborhood. But overnight, we should start to see some drier air push across our region, and we'll see temperatures dipping down to the lower end of the single digits. Tomorrow, it's going to be a gorgeous day across Toronto, and we'll see mostly sunny skies and a high temperature of about 12 degrees. And then tomorrow night, we'll see increasing clouds. And that is ahead of a storm system that's going to be pushing across our way. And it might trigger off some showers on Tuesday afternoon. I think Tuesday morning, we're going to begin with some sunshine as well as a mix of clouds as well. But by the afternoon and evening time, we could end up seeing some rain that will likely last into Wednesday and Thursday. On all 3 days, we should see a high temperature right around 10 degrees. Right now at Pearson, it's 9 degrees. Our overnight low is 3 degrees.
680 News Time, 5:53.
In times like these, shouldn't your money work even harder for you? We think so. That's why at Duca Credit Union, you get no-fee checking accounts. You also get high interest on deposits and investments, and low mortgage rates. Plus, you get to share in the profits. That's the Duca difference. And now, get rates as low as 2.49% on a 5-year fixed mortgage when you switch to Duca. Find out how at mortgage.duca.com. Do more, be more, achieve more with Duca Credit Union. Conditions apply.
We work for you.
Talking.
Again, not the page I was looking for, but here's another little excerpt. We'll get to this. The Jews should now, and this is a quote from the book, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, A History of Nazi Germany, William L. Shire, blah, 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 blah. The Jews should now, in the course of the final solution, be brought to the East for use as labor in big labor gangs with separation of sexes, so you don't accidentally reproduce and make more of you, right? The Jews capable of work are brought to these areas and employed in road building, in which task undoubtedly a great part will fall through natural diminution. The remnant that finally is able to survive all this, since this is undoubtedly the part with the strongest resistance, must be treated accordingly, since these people representing a natural selection are to be regarded as the germ cell of a new Jewish development. In other words, the Jews of Europe were first to be transported to the conquered East, then worked to death, and the few tough ones who survived simply put to death. And the Jews, the millions of them who resided in the East and were already on hand, State Secretary Dr. Joseph Bueller, representing the Governor General of Poland, had a ready suggestion for them. there were nearly 2.5 million Jews in Poland, he said, who, quote, constituted a great danger, end quote. They were, he explained, quote, bearers of disease, black market operators, and furthermore unfit for work, end quote. There was no transportation problem with these 2.5 million souls. They were already there. You can change the word Jews and the Nazi German, wherever. It doesn't say Nazi German, but final solution. You can change final solution to any race, any group. How did a bedbug get on the book? Just now on the top of the fucking book. You see how fucking weird that shit is? That is some symbolic weird shit. Oh yeah, it's alive. It's trying to wiggle its nose. Why don't they bite me when I'm holding them like this? If you're so smart and fit for survival.
Look for ways to bring its magic to those stuck at home during the coronavirus pandemic, and we're now learning the entertainment giant is offering free drawing classes on YouTube. So it gives us the chance to learn how to draw some of the most popular Disney characters, whether you're a fan of Goofy all the way to Elsa from Frozen, and you actually get to learn from Disney's lead animators. And studies are saying that drawing is more than just a way to pass the time. It can actually have a significant effect on one's mental health, especially when emotionally stressed. And this comes as analysts.
Hey, it's a marketable skill. Everybody's going to work for Disney. Disney or Tim Hortons.
Closed, and it's also furloughed thousands of workers during the pandemic. On Friday, we saw Disney hire by roughly 0.2% to $101.19.
Really?
And investors are preparing to see what direction U.S. stock futures will move in to get a sense if North American markets are some more buying or might we see some selling. Wall Street finished Friday higher by at least 1.1%, but it did log its first weekly loss in 3 weeks. But it was a 3-day rally for the Dow, up by 260 points. S&P added 38 on Friday, and the Nasdaq gained 139. And analysts say investors are preparing for an interest rate decision from the U.S. Fed on Wednesday, as well as first quarter GDP data. Now, as for the TSX, it finished another week in the green, up around 0.2%.
In the green, not in the black, in the green.
To 14,420. We have oil coming off its biggest weekly percentage loss ever. It fell around 32%. On Friday, it was higher by 2.7%, closing at $16.94 a barrel, and it did log a 3-day rally. Canadian dollar losing 12/100ths of a cent on Friday, closing at 70.94 cents US, while gold lost $9.80 on Friday, closing at $1,735. At the Business Center, I'm Carl Garnash.
Here's the top 10 reasons to get 10 Timbits free. They're fun, awesome, tasty, shareable, delicious, snackable, craveable, dippable, delectable, and free. Spend $10, get 10 Timbits free. Offer on qualifying purchases of $10 before taxes and
When we roll through, leave the Timbits box open on the dash so we know it's you.
Here of inline fiberglass windows and doors. I am proud to be living and working here in the Greater Toronto area. All of us are so lucky and blessed to be part of this strong community, province, and country
of Ontario.
At this time, I feel it is important to remind all our friends, family, and employees to keep an eye on one another, especially the most vulnerable. Let's also come together in support of the heroes on the front lines. Together, we will get through this. Thank you.
As an essential service, Roto-Rooter wants you to know that they remain ready to help you.
Oh, those are two different runs of BBs.
That's disinfection needs. Thank you for understanding as they take preventive measures to ensure everyone's health is a top priority. Contact them at rotorooter.com. Now, 680 News regional weather conditions for Walmart.
At Walmart, it's not business as usual, but our commitment to our associates remains the same. We've reduced store hours, added in-store safety measures, and increased the hourly wage. In Oshawa, light rain 9 degrees, Richmond Hill 9 degrees and mostly cloudy, and in downtown Toronto 9 and light rain. 680 News Time, 6 o'clock.
Number 1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is 680 News, Toronto.
I checked everything.
Good evening. This is Sunday, April the 26th. I'm Eden Debebath, and I'm Veronica Thor. Here's what's making news this hour.
I'm sorry, parents, but you might be stuck with your kids for a little while longer. The Ford government announced that all publicly funded schools will remain closed until at least May 31st.
Not everyone is happy about the temporary pandemic pay increase for frontline workers. Paramedics say they're not included.
Answering your questions, Mayor John Tory talks struggles for renters and how to avoid a second wave of COVID-19. Toronto City Council meets this coming Thursday, but not in person.
Everybody will be online. Everybody will have an iPad.
Physical distancing means the councillors will video conference instead of gathering at City Hall. Teams are still getting deals done one day after the NFL draft wraps up. That includes the Saints adding a quarterback. Sports at 15.
Eyes are on U.S. stock futures to see if we're in for some buying or selling to kick off the week. And one coffee chain is taking action to support those affected by the recent shooting in Nova Scotia. Business at 26.
Breaking news time, 6:01. It's time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Good evening, Barb Andrews.
Good evening. This report brought to you by St. Louis Bar and Grill. Some new problems we've got on the QEW, eastbound QEW, just east of Erin Mills Parkway. We do
Never
have
let
a
them
right
see your
lane
long
here
hair.
with
Once
the
they see your long hair, they know
We have,
exactly what you are.
crews on the
Like
scene.
you, so.
Otherwise, just dealing with some construction on our major routes. Looking at the Gardner heading eastbound, it's in pretty good shape heading into downtown. No major issues. Northbound DVP in good shape. Northbound 404 from the 407
I never thought I would need a mirror
Highway
like
7,
right
some
there,
delays.
but I got
It's
one.
because we have the HOV and 3 left lanes blocked for construction. On the southbound side, southbound 404 DVP in good shape. Looking at the westbound
home,
Gardner
garbage, I come
QEW,
back.
no recent issues there. 401 overall lightly traveled. Westbound 401, the northbound Allen ramp to westbound 401 collectors, that is closed for construction. Otherwise, 401 looks good, and some construction on the eastbound 407 east of Yonge to east of the 404. Only left lane gets through. St. Louis Bar and Grill thanks you for supporting local businesses, including your local St. Louis restaurant through takeout and delivery. Their deepest gratitude goes to first responders keeping us all safe. Your next report coming up at 6:11 with the forecast. Jason Fraser.
Well, even though some of us are seeing mostly cloudy skies, I can't rule out the possibility of another rain shower impacting our area. Overnight, we'll see clearing skies and temperatures dipping down to the lower end of the single digits. Our overnight low tonight is 3 degrees.
Right now in downtown Toronto, we're sitting at 9 degrees with some light rain falling, and the same over at Pearson Airport. 680 News Time, 6:03. Despite dropping case numbers and progress towards a vaccine, we still have a long way to go in our fight against COVID-19. For that reason, Education Minister Stephen Lecce says public schools will remain closed until at least May 31st.
Lecce says the closure could be extended even further if the pandemic continues. 680 Sahar Hashimi reports.
Education Minister Stephen Lecce says the decision was based on advice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health.
That extension will provide the province, the government, more time, sufficient time to review the data and the modeling so that we make the best decision based on the best medical advice to our government. And so that ultimately students remain safe and staff remain safe should they return to school some point this year or at any time beyond.
Lecce says that the government's #1 priority is still the safety of students. He adds that students may still go back to class before the end of the school year, but that all depends on how this pandemic unfolds. I'm Zahir Hashimi.
While 437 new cases of COVID-19 and 24 more deaths have been reported in the province today, there are also more than 8,000 people who've recovered from the virus. Meantime, some of those working to keep us safe are frustrated after learning they don't qualify for Ford's new pay increase. 680's Michelle Mackey reports.
It's not about the pay increase, it's about the lack of acknowledgement. That's the message from Dave Wakely, president of the Peel Paramedic Union, who says his members do not qualify for the province's temporary pandemic pay increase.
There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason as to why certain folks are excluded from it. Paramedics, respiratory therapists, midwives.
A spokesperson for Health Minister Christine Elliott tells 680 News, quote, "We're grateful for the tireless work of our frontline healthcare workers and will continue to stand behind them as we respond collectively to the COVID-19 outbreak. We're continuing to consult with our healthcare partners to address questions and determine who might meet the criteria for pandemic pay," unquote. Meantime, Ontario is marking the first time there have been more new recoveries than new cases. I'm Michelle Mackey.
680 News Time, 6:05. Happening now, York Regional Police say a massive fire at a garden center in Whitchurch, Stouffville has resulted in a significant visual distraction for drivers. Several callers into the 680 newsroom are reporting thick clouds of black smoke that can be seen off of Highway 401. Fire crews were first called for reports of a large structure fire on Bloomington Road in the Woodbine and Warden Avenue area. Crews are working to contain the fire. earlier, and there's been no reports of any injuries. And police say the Bloomington Road is closed between Woodbine and Warden for the meantime.
Mayor John Tory joined us on air for an exclusive interview today to answer your questions about COVID-19. As 680's Stuart McGinn reports, Tory is cautious of reopening the city too soon.
It's what we've heard over and over. Returning back to any sense of normal life needs to be done slowly to avoid any possibility of a second wave of the virus.
You suddenly said tomorrow, for example, that you could have a Blue Jays game and you could have 50,000 people at the Rogers Centre. That is going to promote a second wave happening.
As the struggle, mentally and financially, continues for so many, Tory spoke specifically to a difficult situation for renters, asking landlords to be accommodating as we inch closer towards the 1st of May.
I think a simple proposition like saying we'll allow you to take a month off your May payment or cut it in half and spread the rest of it out is a very reasonable thing.
The mayor added, it's important to think about getting comfortable with your work from home setup because there's no way we'll see the entire city get back to their normal work life all at once. I'm Stuart McGinn.
Well, the pandemic has many working from home, and Toronto City Councillors are no different. They will be gathering virtually this Thursday for the first ever online meeting. 680's Kevin Meisner reports on the virtual City Hall.
The Toronto City Council chamber will remain empty on Thursday, but city business will resume. Councillors are going to be meeting using Cisco WebEx technology. Mayor John Tory tells me it's very similar to the Zoom and Skype group video chats a lot of us have been using.
I had a briefing on this, and it's going to work much like a lot of these teleconferences the listeners have been engaged in from their own work over the last number of weeks.
Tory says regular council rules will apply and the speaker is still in charge.
Everybody will be online. Everybody will be able to see each other. Everybody will have an iPad. They will be able to indicate they want to speak, much as people know from some of these apps that they can do.
And the public will be able to watch this virtual meeting as usual. Just call up the Toronto Council YouTube channel. At City Hall, I'm Kevin Meisner.
This is 680 News at 6:07. Police are investigating after anti-Semitic graffiti was spray painted on the garage and coffee shop downtown during Passover weekend. The garage of a home on Crawford Street near College in Ossington was defaced with a tag where it insinuated that Jews were to blame for the COVID-19 pandemic. Earlier in the month, at a nearby Aroma Espresso bar, which is part of a chain of cafes founded in Israel back in 1994, the shop was tagged with a message that is also of a similar nature. This same Aroma location near College and Bathurst Street were vandalized with a similar hateful message just a week earlier. Officers condemned the hate messages and say the investigation is ongoing.
You're listening to 680 News. While Ontario schools will be closed for at least another month, it's a different story in Quebec. That province will be opening their schools and daycares on Monday. Premier François Legault says that outlying regions of the province, which are less impacted by COVID-19, will be the first to open schools again. The Premier also says that parents aren't obliged to send their kids back to school. Quebec reported 69 new deaths of COVID-19 today, their lowest total in a week.
This is All News Radio 680 News. It's the final day for commercial flights between Canada and the U.S. Last week, Air Canada announced it was suspending service to the States after both countries agreed to extend restrictions on cross-border travel. Non-essential travel between Canada and the States was banned back in March, on 21st of March through the border, has remained open for trade and commerce. Service is set to resume on May 22nd.
Well, airing on City TV this evening, the biggest names in Canadian entertainment will be coming together virtually for a special show of support during the pandemic. 680's Mark Douglas has more on tonight's Canada Strong concert.
Sam Roberts is joining in with what could be the unofficial theme song for getting through this pandemic. The all-star Canadian lineup will pay tribute to frontline workers and raise money for Food Banks Canada. Having performers like Alessia Cara, the Arkells, and the Bare Naked Ladies will certainly help. Also making an appearance from their living room or basement or wherever, Canadian athletes including Bielka Andreescu, Rick Hansen, and Tessa Virtue. Rick Mercer will certainly have a few things to say.
To stay at home, healthy, and go stir crazy just like the rest of us.
Watch Canada Strong this evening on City and text COVID to 30333 to make a donation or go to foodbankscanada.ca. I'm Mark Douglas.
Coronavirus updates and breaking news.
All on the Be the First to Know newsletter.
Sign up now at 680news.com/newsletters.
Now time for the 680 News gas price update. Enpro says the price at the pumps won't be changing at midnight. They're set to hold at 82.9 cents a liter at most GTA stations. Traffic and weather together next.
680 News Time, 6:10.
The Salvation Army thanks its frontline personnel and volunteers who are working tirelessly to provide essential services to the vulnerable during COVID-19. As this pandemic continues to impact our communities across the nation, the Salvation Army is adjusting its programs and services to bring help and hope to those who need it most. Join us and support our neighbors in need. To donate, visit salvationarmy.ca or call 1-800-SAL-ARMY.
Northwood Mortgage people work harder to find solutions just for you. One example, Northwood regularly helps families get into new homes after the bank has turned them down. Unlike the big banks, Northwood Mortgage is more flexible. Northwood Mortgage listens and works harder to create a solution that's customized for you. Northwood Mortgage. Visit northwoodmortgage.com.
We're working harder for you.
License 10349.
680 News Time, 6:11.
It's time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Barb Andrews.
This report brought to you by Serpa Motorsports. Some good news. Earlier problems eastbound QEW east of Air Mills Parkway has cleared. We did have a stalled vehicle in the right lane. All of that gone, though. All lanes are open. Eastbound QEW looks good. Eastbound Gardner, no problems to let you know about. Northbound DVP is a light drive. Northbound 404, we do have construction. Northbound 404 from the 407 to north of Highway 7. The HOV lanes and then the three left lanes are all blocked for this construction. Just some minor delays as you make your way through that area. On the southbound side, 404 DVP looks good. Westbound Gardner QEW, no issues at last check. And looking at the 401, lightly traveled. Looking at the eastbound 401, no issues. Eastbound 407, we do have some construction east of Young to east of the 404. Still have only a left lane open. But some good news, the ramp to Leslie and the ramp to the 404 from the eastbound 407 have reopened. Suzuki Rider Serpa Motorsports Young Street Aurora features a full model lineup in their exclusive one price online store. Call Serpa Motorsports now and experience 100% white glove service. Your next report at 6:21 with the forecast, Jason Fraser.
We'll continue to see cloudy skies across the GTA, and an isolated rain shower is possible overnight, and we'll then finally see some clearing. And then for tomorrow, we're going to start out with a few clouds, but we'll largely end up seeing some sunny skies and temperatures improving to about 12 degrees. And then tomorrow night, we'll see the clouds return and a slight chance of some rain showers overnight into Tuesday. Our overnight low tonight is 3 degrees.
And right now in downtown Toronto, it's lightly raining outside of our 680 News studios. It's 9 degrees and similar conditions at Pearson Airport.
Still to come on 680 News, one of Hollywood's biggest directors is speaking out as his home state is set to lift quarantine.
680 News Time, 6:13.
Your home is more than just a place to live. It's your window of opportunity. With a home equity loan from Capital Direct, your home can provide valuable equities that will give you the freedom to complete those renovations, support your business, or simply get your debt in line. An easy call to 1-800-NEW-CAPITAL will open the doors to all the good things you thought were beyond your reach as a homeowner. So pick up the phone and call 1-800-NEW-CAPITAL today.
.ca. At Global Pet Foods, health and safety is a top priority. That's why we're taking extra precautions to keep customers, their pets, and our dedicated staff safe. Your pets are part of the family, so it's important that our proudly Canadian, locally owned stores are still open and fully stocked with pet foods, treats, toys, and more. For added safety, we've shifted to a curbside program for all our customers' needs. Find your local store today at globalpetfoods.com and call to place your order for pickup.
This is All News Radio, 680 News.
Overcast and 9 degrees in downtown Toronto. Good evening. From the 680 News Broadcast Center, I'm Eden Zaveva.
And I'm Veronica Thor. Here's what you need to know right now.
All Ontario public schools will remain closed until May 31st to keep staff and students safe from COVID-19. Education Minister Stephen Lecce says the closure could be extended even further if the pandemic continues. Healthcare workers are speaking out after finding out some frontline staff do not qualify for Premier Doug Ford's new pay increase. And in some uplifting news, Ontario is announcing more recoveries from COVID-19 than new cases. 680 News Time, 6:15. Now 680 Sports and Sportsnet 590 The Fan. Here's Brett Gunning.
The Saints are taking care of their quarterbacks today. Taysom Hill re-signing on a 2-year, $21 million deal. Well, the top pick from 2015, Jameis Winston, signs with New Orleans as a backup on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. Starting Friday, the NBA will take one step closer to returning to play. On Friday, teams will be allowed to open their practice facilities if their local government doesn't have stay-at-home orders in place. Group workouts will not be allowed. All workouts will have to be voluntary. The league plans to try to work with teams like the Raptors, who will not be able to open their facilities. It won't be simple, though, according to Adrian Wojnarowski.
What that's going to look like is going to be really, I think, a complex rollout here over the next couple weeks for the league and for teams.
The Raptors are unable to open their training facilities because of Ontario's state of emergency. Sports 15 and 45 past every hour or anytime at sportsnet.ca/590.
Traffic reports every 10 minutes on the ones.
Traffic alerts at once. This
is 680 News. The safety of those around you is more important than ever. The Government of Canada has stated that the use of a non-medical mask or facial covering can be an additional measure you can take to protect others around you. It's important we keep the supply of medical masks for frontline healthcare workers. CanadaMaskSupply.ca offers personal, non-medical masks and face shields at reasonable prices. Proudly made in Canada for Canadians. Buy non-medical masks and face shields now at CanadaMaskSupply.ca.
I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat.
I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink.
The Scott Mission has been helping Toronto's hungry and homeless since 1941, and they really need your help, especially during these uncertain times. You can provide a meal for just $4.25 and ensure that everyone who comes to the Scott Mission is warmly welcomed by people who care. Make your gift online today at scottmission.com/hope or call 416-923-2400.
You're listening to All News Radio 680 News. 680 News is working for you, trying to get answers to any questions you might have about COVID-19. Today, we're looking into whether the virus is spreading when you compare gender-based data. Dr. Lauren Small is the Medical Director of Infection Prevention and Control at Trillium Health and says more women do seem to be contracting it worldwide.
There's really a number of possible reasons why this may be, and it really may simply reflect who's actually getting tested. For various reasons, it may be that more women are getting tested, even if equal numbers of men and women are getting infected. There's also some indication worldwide that men are dying more and have perhaps more serious illness. And this may be related to men having more chronic lung disease or underlying illnesses around the world. So for instance, in China, there's a high rate of smoking, but this is really more among men rather than women. Most likely the virus does not have an inherent difference between the sexes.
If there's something about the pandemic you'd like to learn more about, you can send us a direct message on Instagram or call the 680 News listener line at 416-872-6800. This is 680 News at 6:19. In Georgia, Republican Governor Brian Kemp is considering lifting quarantine and opening up non-essential businesses like movie theaters tomorrow. And one filmmaker is speaking out against that. Vanity Fair reporting that Spike Lee, director of Do the Right Thing and BlacKkKlansman, sent them an email advocating against the move. Instead of opening non-essential businesses, Lee says the governor should focus on increasing testing for the virus. Georgia's economy is set to reopen tomorrow as America nears 1 million COVID-19 cases. And Muslims around the world have begun celebrating Ramadan amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Ramadan is usually a festive season with the day-long fast followed by lavish meals and evening get-togethers. But this year, many are confined to their homes. Travel is heavily restricted and public venues like parks, malls and even mosques are shuttered. A key element of Ramadan is charity, with the fast partly intended to cultivate empathy for the needy. But many countries have imposed bans on communal meals, forcing charities to organize home deliveries instead. I'm Sarah Bassett. The FBI is investigating a fire at an Islamic center in Missouri that broke out the first day of Ramadan.
The FBI is offering a $5,000 reward in its investigation of a fire at an Islamic center in southwest Missouri. Federal investigators say the fire at the center in Cape Girardeau occurred the first morning of Ramadan, the Muslim holy month. About 15 people were evacuated from the center, but nobody was hurt. The Council on American Islamic Relations is urging local authorities to investigate a possible racial motive behind the blaze. Governor Mike Parson has called it a cowardly act. Kent Martin, ABC News, St. Louis.
In New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio says he hopes to have a plan by June 1st on how to rebuild the city after the novel coronavirus threat subsides.
This city was written off more times than I can count. This city came back stronger every time. Now we're going to come back stronger and fairer. We're going to learn the powerful lessons of this horrible tragedy. We're not going to allow the disparities that we've seen.
The mayor also says the latest statistics on people being treated for COVID-19 continues to be stable or on the decline. 680 News Time, 621. It's time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Barb Andrews.
This report is brought to you by Queensway Hyundai. Overall, the 401 looks good, lightly traveled. The ramp from northbound Allen to westbound 401 Collectors, that's really the only issue at this point. That ramp is closed. Otherwise, 401 looks good both directions. Eastbound 407 from east of Yonge to east of the 404, only a left lane open. That is for construction taking place. If you're traveling along the southbound 404 DVP, lightly traveled. Same story with the westbound Gardner, westbound QEW, no recent issues. Eastbound QEW moving well. Eastbound Gardner also in good shape. At last check, no issues along the northbound DVP, the 404. We do have some construction on northbound 404. From the 407 to north of Highway 7, the HOV and the 3 left lanes are closed for construction, causing some minor delays through there. And then off of our major routes, westbound Lawrence approaching the DVP, we do have a collision there blocking 2 right lanes. Emergency crews on the scene. Buy with confidence at Queensway Hyundai, now offering purchase from Home Solutions, 6 months payment deferral and concierge services. Here to service the community, visit queenswayhyundai.ca. Your next report at 6:31 with the forecast, Jason Fraser.
So many of us will see lots of cloud cover for the rest of tonight. Can't rule out the possibility of an isolated rain shower developing. We'll see temperatures dipping down to the single digits, and then tomorrow we're going to begin with lots of sunshine, but by the latter half of the afternoon, we could end up seeing just a few clouds develop, but no rain to talk about. High temperature of 12 degrees. The next rain chance will likely come late on Tuesday. I think we're going to start out with some sun, and then we'll continue to see some clouds build in. We'll see a high temperature then right around 12 degrees. A high for Wednesday as well as Thursday near 10 on both days, and we'll continue to see some rain to develop on all 3 of those days. Our overnight low tonight is 3 degrees.
Right now in downtown Toronto, overcast, 9 degrees, and at Pearson Airport, a few clouds and 9 as well. Remember, 680 News is the only radio station with a weather guarantee. Today's jackpot stands at $22,600. Coming up at 6:30, we'll have the latest on COVID-19, including when students in Ontario will be getting back to class. And for the first time ever, the province is reporting more recoveries from the virus than new cases. 680 News Time, 6:23.
Introducing Irwin's new Command Lock Tape Measures, built for extra control with a finger brick, up to 14-foot reach, and a high-contrast DuPont Mylar film-coated white blade. Plus, it comes in a high-impact resistant case. When every quarter-inch matters, these tapes are designed with your job in mind. New Irwin Command Lock Tapes, built for the trades. Available only at Canadian Tire stores across Canada. Find out more at irwintools.ca.
We work for you.
From talking to the newsmakers,
To getting the answers to what you need to know about COVID-19.
and answers about your job and finances.
If you have a question, ask it at 680news.com/answers.
680 News gets the answers.
We're in this together.
680 News, working for you.
Netflix seems to be doing pretty well these days. The company said it had nearly 200 million paid subscribers globally at the end of the first quarter. So with all of us staying inside, well, almost all of us, what's keeping us entertained on the popular streaming platform? 680's Lucas Castelletto has more.
With all of us staying inside, well, almost all of us, what is keeping us entertained on Netflix these days? Well, it comes down to two wildly popular 2020 releases, Tiger King and Love is Blind.
Ladies and gentlemen, before you hear it on the news, I'm going to tell you myself about an hour ago we had an incident where one of the employees stepped down into the cage and tried to tore her arm off. I can give you your money back or I can give you a rain check.
Remarkably, Tiger King is...
These weirdos fucking standing there. Oh, I'll just ride up with you for something to do. No, you won't. Motherfucker, you're coughing and spitting all the fucking time. I got COPD. That's fine. I'm still not getting in a close space with you, buddy. Fucking hell. So I got a choice. I can let my immune system get exposed to more bullshit, or I can come up the fucking stairs. Yeah, that's killer shit, eh? And they put entertainment right before business because it's the same goddamn thing, isn't it? Yeah, 22 minutes. I would have been 45 minutes trying to get this shit started again. We have rice cakes. Rice cakes come in packs of 7. Why is that? Because they're not. They give you the extra one because like to make like psychologically you're getting one free, but it's just rice cakes. They were cheese flavored.
AGM. We're two men and a truck. So, you're moving to a new home.
You gotta be more than just two guys in one truck.
You know you can trust. Well, naturally, you think two men in a truck, since you know they have lots of men and lots of trucks.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Didn't I just say that? You knew I knew. You knew I was gonna figure that out.
And the professionalism you can trust.
You're like 100 trucks and 200 guys or some shit, right?
We're open for business. Two men and a truck, the movers who care.
I want movers who don't care.
680 News Time, 626. Now time for the 680 News Business Report. Good evening, Carl Garnish.
Good evening, Eden. While investors are turning their attention to U.S. stock futures to see which direction North American markets could move in as we get ready for another week. And right now it's looking to be some selling. We actually saw futures move up right at the open, and now they're kind of sinking in the red here. And investors are preparing for the U.S. Fed's interest rate decision on Wednesday, with rates already near zero as the central bank continues to look for ways to cushion the economic blow from the coronavirus.
Well, negative like Japan.
First quarter GDP data for the U.S. is also expected Wednesday. Taking a look at Dow futures, they're down by 54 points, just slightly right now. In Dow components, 3M and Caterpillar are a focus for investors this week, as both are set to release earnings on Tuesday. On Friday, we had 3M up by 1.8% at the close, Caterpillar higher by 1%. S&P futures are down by 5 points, and NASDAQ futures are lower by 10. And all three U.S. benchmarks are coming off their first weekly loss in 3 weeks.
Drinking tea now.
As for the TSX, it actually logged another week in the green, higher by about 0.2%. On Friday, we have the TSX up by 1.1% to 14,420. And Tim Hortons and its 1,500 restaurant owners across Canada are launching a campaign to support those affected by the recent shooting in Nova Scotia.
To support the Red Cross.
The company is launching the Nova Scotia Strong Donut, with 100% of the proceeds being donated to the Canadian Red Cross Stronger Together Nova Scotia Fund. The donut goes on sale across the country Wednesday, and this campaign has already received support from NHL stars, including Sidney Crosby. Shares of Tim's parent company, Restaurant Brands International, at the close on Bay Friday was up by 1.7%. In electronic trade, we have gold higher by 0.2% to 1,739. As for oil and electronic trade, it's down by 2.6% to 16.49 a barrel, as it comes off a weekly loss around 32%, its biggest weekly percentage loss ever. Canadian dollar on Friday lost 0.01 of a cent, finishing at 70.94 cents U.S.
This is the biggest loss. The last week it was
Get Real Canadian Superstore No Frills customers. Flyers are now digital only. Please know that low price commitment is still the #1 priority, and they're still providing great weekly promotions and offers. Find them in store on Superstore.ca, NoFrills.ca, and in the PC Optimum app. To the nurses and doctors who doubled their shifts. To those wiping down every surface and keeping us safe. Those who keep the lights on and the food coming. To all frontline and emergency workers, Subaru dealers salute you. In fact, while we continue to provide essential services to all Subaru customers, we'll drop everything to put you first. Simply visit us online because that's how we'll safely plan every appointment. From your Ontario Subaru dealers, let's all stay safe. Dear Real Canadian Superstore No Frills customers, flyers are now digital only. Please know that low price commitment is still the #1 priority, and they're still providing great weekly promotions and offers. Find them in store on superstore.ca, nofrills.ca, and in the PC Optimum app.
Oh, the neighborhood's closed. The whole
Right now in
city's
downtown
closed.
Toronto,
Everything's closed.
overcast,
Well, I think
9
the grocery
degrees,
store's
680
technically
news, the CFTR AM Toronto, 680 news time, 6:30.
You know, the kids at the street, the sun is still.
News in Toronto. This is 680 News.
Good evening. This is Sunday, April 26th. I'm Veronica Thor. And I'm Eden Tabata. Here's what's making news this hour.
All public schools in Ontario will remain closed until at least May 31st. Education Minister Stephen Lecce says he still doesn't know when students will go back to class.
The union representing Peel Paramedics is speaking up after they were left out of the province's pandemic pay increase for frontline workers.
Here's your chance to see your city councillor's home office. Toronto City Council will meet this coming Thursday online for the first time because of physical distancing.
I want to see what kind of posters you got on the back.
To help its most vulnerable residents weather the COVID-19 pandemic.
The NBA will let some teams reopen their practice facilities next week while the NFL's busy weekend
will the state and
continues.
local authorities?
Sports at 45.
Oh, who cares about that?
The way to kick off the week as U.S. stock futures go from green to red, and quarterly results are on the way from those in the Canadian oil patch. Business at 56.
Oh yeah, sure enough, the zombies are trying to rush the car. Fuck you, you're not getting nothing.
Traffic and weather
You're not getting nothing from these
Good evening,
people.
Barb Andrews.
Fucking
Good evening, Veronica. This report brought to you by
Fucking
Higher the
zombies.
Gardner.
What
If
is
you
wrong
are
with
traveling
this?
on the eastbound 401 at last check, no issues, lightly traveled. Eastbound 407, east of Yonge to the 404, only left lane open. That is for construction. Westbound 401 in good shape, only one issue.
Rice
Northbound
cakes
Allen
are
Ramp,
not
westbound
meal.
401 collectors closed. That is for some construction. Looking at the 404 DVP, overall in pretty good shape. We do have construction on northbound 404 from the 407 to north of Highway 7, the HOV lane, and then the 3 left lanes are closed for construction. So you can expect some minor delays as you make your way through there. Looking at the Gardner, it's in good shape heading into or out of downtown. At last check, no issues along the QEW. Off of our major routes, Lawrence and on Lawrence, right at the DVP, we do have a collision. Westbound traffic, 2 right lanes are blocked, and eastbound Lawrence, the left lane is blocked because of that. We also have a collision affecting traffic along Bellamy northbound towards Lawrence. And at last check, Bloomington had been closed both directions, Woodbine to Warden. That was for fire investigation. Yes, you can still hire the gardener to keep your yard green, and no, you don't have to come near them. Look at all the things the gardener can do for your yard at hirethegardener.com. That's hirethegardener.com. Your next report at 6:41 with the forecast, Jason Fraser.
We'll continue to see mostly cloudy skies across the GTA and a slight chance at even seeing some rain develop during the evening time hours. Overnight, we will see clearing skies and temperatures dipping down to the lower end of the single digits. Our overnight low tonight is 3 degrees.
Right now in downtown Toronto, overcast, 9 degrees, and at Airport, light rain and 9 as well. 680 news time, 6:33. Well, even though health officials say the curve of COVID-19 is flattening, we're still not out of the woods just yet, especially parents. Ontario's education minister announcing today that public schools will stay closed until at least May 31st. 680's Zahir Hashimi joins us now with the latest from Stephen Lecce, who says this may not be the last time the closure is extended.
I'm sorry, parents, but you might be stuck with your kids for a little while longer. Education Minister Stephen Lecce has announced that all publicly funded schools will remain closed until at least May 31st. He says the decision is based off advice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and they will only reopen once it's deemed safe to return to a classroom.
We're going to ensure that safety remains our paramount priority, which is why we're providing an additional month extension for us to work with Dr. Williams and the command table to make sure we get this right, to make sure that ultimately the students and staff, when they return, can do so with absolute confidence it is safe to do so.
During his afternoon briefing, Lecce stressed that all students will be able to finish the school year online. The government says the extension is meant to give officials time to review updated modeling data. I'm Zahir Hashimi.
You're listening to 680 News. Some frontline workers are wondering why they were left out of the pandemic pay boost announced yesterday by Doug Ford. 680's Michelle Mackey joins us with the latest, including a rising number of COVID-19 recoveries in Ontario.
The union representing Peel paramedics is speaking out. President Dave Wakely says paramedics were left out of the temporary pandemic pay increase and hopes the exclusion was an oversight.
If that's not the case, then it kind of feels like a level of disrespect being paid to my members and the work that they're doing.
Wakely also notes respiratory therapists and midwives are left out of qualifying staff. A spokesperson for Health Minister Christine Elliott tells 680 News in part, we're continuing to consult with our healthcare partners to address questions and determine who might meet the criteria for pandemic pay. Meantime, Ontario is reporting 24 more deaths resulting from COVID-19, nearly 500 additional recoveries, and 437 new cases, the lowest daily increase in over a week. I'm Michelle Mackey.
680 News Time, 6:35. Happening now, a significant visual distraction for drivers in York Region and an ongoing road closure. Regional police are investigating a massive fire at a garden center in Whitechurch, Stouffville. Several callers into the 680 newsroom are reporting thick clouds of black smoke that can be seen off of Highway 401. 16 fire trucks appear to be fighting the large structure fire on Bloomington Road in the Woodbine and Warden Avenue area. There's no reported injuries at this time. Police say Bloomington Road will remain closed for between Woodbine and Warden for the investigation.
You're listening to 680 News. Well, Mayor John Tory tells us that there is a possibility a second wave of COVID-19 hits Toronto and that city residents need to brace for it. The mayor answered your COVID-19 questions this morning live on 680 News. Stuart McGinn of our station has more.
We've been promised it will be slow and steady, recognizing doing too much all at once could increase our chances of getting a second wave of COVID-19. John Tory also talked about news affecting the championship defending Toronto Raptors, as the NBA is starting to allow teams to gear up and use their practice facilities.
We're at work on that. If you have a whole bunch of people suddenly in their practice facility or anywhere else, this goes against what we're still trying to do.
Tory also called on landlords for flexibility, with more concerns from renters about their financial situations as we approach May 1st. I'm Stuart McGinn.
Toronto City Council meets this coming Thursday, but City Hall will still be empty. Councillors will be connecting virtually for their first ever online meeting. 680's Kevin Meisner has the latest from City Hall.
Many of us have relied on Zoom, Skype, and other group chat apps to connect with our family, friends, and work because of physical distancing. Mayor John Tory tells me Toronto City Councillors will be using Cisco WebEx technology for their meeting.
Everybody will have an iPad. They will be able to indicate they want to speak, and it'll be up to the speaker, as always, to manage this bunch.
Tory says the online meeting may actually mean more efficient debate.
I talked to some of the other mayors about this from the GTA, so I had them together for a meeting. They said actually the meetings are a little bit shorter because people, for some reason or other, speak more briefly when they're online as opposed to when they're not. So we can always hope.
The council meeting will be live streamed as usual for the public on the Toronto Council YouTube channel. At City Hall, I'm Kevin Meisner.
Another 2 residents of the Eatonville Care Centre have passed away. Both residents tested positive for COVID-19, although only one of them is confirmed to have died of complications related to the virus. According to a release from the care home, this brings their deaths total to 38, as well as 143 confirmed cases. The Eatonville Care Centre is one of the long-term care homes that the military is assisting in the coming weeks.
And Toronto has opened 11 new facilities and secured more than 1,200 hotel rooms to house people who would normally use the city's shelter system. The city is also working on helping people in the shelter system gain access to permanent homes with Toronto Community Housing.
Does that include
73 people have been moved out of the shelter system and into permanent housing so far. Multiple shelters in the city are already experiencing outbreaks of COVID-19.
This is 680 News. Durham Region has set up a fund to help vulnerable residents during the COVID-19 pandemic. Nonprofits in Durham Region will be able to access this one-time community assistance fund to provide urgent help to residents who are vulnerable, homeless, or at risk of being homeless. Durham Region says priority will be given to applicants that support the health and safety, shelter, housing security, or food security for vulnerable residents.
You're listening to All News Radio 680 News. Well, back Labatt Breweries is doing its part to help during the pandemic. Labatt has announced they'll be providing 223,000 cans of drinking water to the city to supply the Toronto Drop-In Network and its Streets to Home program. Mayor John Tory commending Labatt's involvement, saying, quote, "I want to thank the Company of Canada for their commitment to donating cans of drinking water to help our most vulnerable citizens who are impacted by the pandemic." Canada. Labatt says this will allow service providers to distribute drinks along with takeaway meals while maintaining public health guidelines for appropriate physical distancing.
Isn't
is honoring the 22 lives that were lost in a tragic mass shooting in Nova Scotia. The Nova Scotia Strong Donut is now on sale, and 100% of proceeds are being donated to the Canadian Red Cross Stronger Together Nova Scotia Fund. Hockey stars Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon have partnered with Tim Hortons for the launch.
100% of the proceeds will go to a Canadian Red Cross fund supporting the families impacted.
Let's show Nova Scotians how all Canadians stand with them.
The donut goes on sale across Canada on Wednesday.
Reassurance in anxious times. We're in this together. 680 News.
Now, the 680 News gas price update. Encro says the price won't change at midnight. It will hold at 82.9 cents a litre at most GTA stations. Your traffic and weather reports are 60 seconds away. 680 News Time, 6:40.
So, you're stuck inside for, well, who knows how long. Let's take stock. TV? Check. Snacks? Yep. Couch? You better believe it. What about a con artist, a food scientist, a walrus whisperer, and one of the biggest documentary film festivals in the world? No? Well, you're in luck.
Where was that? 966, I believe. Man, I don't know what Romania is. Romania? Is it changing? The word he explains, as we said, quote, bears a disease, black market operators, and furthermore unfit for work, end quote. There was no transportation problem with these 2.5 million souls. They were already there. I have only one request, Dr. Bueller concluded, that the Jewish problem in my territory be solved as quickly as possible. Problem, like the Indian problem. And they're using these terms, the British white paper, the Trudeau white paper. The good state secretary betrayed an impatience which was shared in high Nazi circles right up to Hitler. None of them understood at this time, not in fact until toward the end of 1942 when it was too late, how valuable the millions of Jews might be to the right as slave labor. At this point, they only understood that working millions of Jews to death on the roads of Russia might take some time. Does that sound familiar? The railroads of Canada? Oh yeah, they studied, the Nazis studied how the U.S. and Canada handled black people and Indians and Asians. They did. So at this point, they only understood that working millions of Jews to death on the roads of Russia might take some time. Consequently, long before these unfortunate people could be worked to death, in most cases the attempt was not even begun, Hitler and Himmler decided to dispatch them by quicker means. There were two, principally. One of them, as we have seen, had begun shortly after the invasion of Russia in the summer of 1941. This was the method of mass slaughter of the Polish and Russian Jews by the flying firing squads of the Einsatzgruppen, which accounted for some 750,000. It was this method of achieving the quote-unquote final solution that Himmler had in mind when he addressed the SS generals at Posen on October 4th, 1943. Remember, looking like this. I hear how they talk about you when you leave the room. Looking like this, I hear everything. Think about that. I also want to talk to you quite frankly on a very grave matter. Among ourselves, it should be mentioned quite frankly, and yet we will never speak of it publicly. I mean, the extermination of the Jewish race. Most of you must know what it means when 100 corpses are lying side by side, or 500, or 1,000. To have stuck it out, and at the same time, apart from exceptions caused by human weakness, to have remained decent fellows, that is what has made us hard. I don't understand exactly what he's saying there. This is a page of glory in our history which has never been written and is never to be written. No doubt to be bespectacled SS Führer, whatever, who had almost fainted at the sight of 100 Eastern Jews, including women, being executed for his own delectation, would have seen in the efficient working by SS officers of the gas chambers in the extermination camps an even more glorious page in German history, for it was in these death camps that the quote-unquote final solution achieved its most ghastly success. So the worst mass shooting in North American history would be Wounded Knee, no? Pine Ridge and all that. The extermination camps, like a reservation, eh? Or an internment camp. Right. All the 30-odd principal Nazi concentration camps were death camps, and millions of tortured, starved inmates perished in them. Though the authorities kept records, each camp had its official Totenbuch, death book. They were incomplete and in many cases were destroyed as the victorious Allies closed in. Part of one Totenbuch that survived at Mauthausen listed 35,318 deaths from January 1939 to April 1945. The camp commander, Franz Zieres, put the total number at 65,000, almost twice as much. At the end of 1942, when the need of slave labor began to be acute, Himmler ordered that the death rate in the concentration camps, quote, must be reduced, end quote. Because of the labor shortage, he had been displeased at a report received in his office that of the 136,700 commitments to concentration camps between June and November 1942, some 70,610 had died, and that in addition, 9,267 had been executed and 27,846, quote-unquote, transferred to the gas chamber, that is. This did not leave very many for labor duties, but it was in the extermination camps, the Vernichtungslager, where most progress was made toward the quote-unquote final solution. The greatest and most renowned of these was Auschwitz, whose 4 huge gas chambers and adjoining crematoria gave it a capacity for death and burial far beyond that of the others, Treblinka, Belzec, Sobibor, and Chełmno, all in Poland. There were other minor extermination camps near Riga, Vilna, Minsk, Kaunas, and Lwów, but they were distinguished from the main ones in that they killed by shooting rather than by gas. For a time, there was quite a bit of rivalry among the SS leaders as to which was the most efficient gas to speed the Jews to their death. Speed was an important factor, especially at Auschwitz, where toward the end, the camp was setting new records by gassing 6,000 victims a day. One of the camp's commanders for a period was Rudolf Hess, an ex-convict, once found guilty of murder, who deposed at Nuremberg on the superiority of the gas he employed. Born in 1900, the son of a small shopkeeper in Baden-Baden, Hoes was pressured by his pious Catholic father to become a priest. Instead, he joined the Nazi Party in 1922. That'd make him 21, 22. The next year, he was implicated in the murder of a school teacher who allegedly had denounced Leo Schlager, a German saboteur in the Ruhr, who was executed by the French and became a Nazi martyr. Hoes received a life sentence. He was released in a general amnesty in 1928. So it was only 5 years later. Joined the SS 2 years later, and in 1934 became a member of the Death's Head group of the SS, whose principal job was the guarding of the concentration camps. His first job in this unit was at Dachau. Thus, he spent almost his entire adult life first as a prisoner and then as a jailer. He freely and even exaggeratedly testified to his killings, both on the stand at Nuremberg and in affidavits for the prosecution. Turned over later to the Poles, he was sentenced to death and in March 1947 hanged at Auschwitz, the scene of his greatest crimes. The quote-unquote final solution. I know, cigarette in my hand, talking about poison gases. Just hold on a second. You sound like you've read the book. Just hold on. The quote-unquote final solution of the Jewish question meant the complete extermination of all Jews in Europe. I was ordered to establish extermination facilities at Auschwitz in June 1941. At that time, there were already in the general government of Poland 3 other extermination camps: Belzec, Treblinka, and Wolzek. I visited Treblinka to find out how they carried out their extermination. The camp commandant at Treblinka told me that he had liquidated 80,000 in the course of half a year. He was principally concerned with liquidating all the Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto. There's an asterisk here. A task which, because of the large numbers involved and because of, at the end, armed resistance, could not be completed, as we shall see, until 1943. Armed resistance, AR. Can't say AR-15 without the 15. He used monoxide gas, that would be carbon monoxide, and I did not think that his methods were very efficient. Oh, I think you're a red blood cell, a normal red blood cell that's healthy, so not mine. A healthy red blood cell is 212 times more likely to absorb a carbon monoxide molecule than an oxygen molecule. So when I set up the extermination building at Auschwitz, I used Zyklon B, which was a crystallized prussic acid, which we dropped into the death chamber from a small opening. It took from 3 to 15 minutes to kill the people in the death chamber, depending upon climatic conditions. Oh, they were studying the climate too. Those are German and West German dials on that weather station. Maybe I'll show it to you. We knew when the people were dead because their screaming stopped. We usually waited about a half hour before we opened the doors and removed the bodies. After the bodies were removed, our special commandos took off the rings and extracted the gold from the teeth of the corpses. Remember what I said about 3M making my teeth? And that movie case, that high 8 movie case is 3M, and it's the rabbi and the pharmacist. There are links to everything. It's a one big long circle. My teeth are made of tree. Oh, I got 20. I think I got 20 fillings. Yeah, 20 fillings. And you can't see them. Tree resin. Another improvement we made over Treblinka was that we built our gas chambers to accommodate 2,000 people at one time, whereas at Treblinka, their 10 gas chambers only accommodated 200 people each. Host then explained how the victims were quote-unquote selected for the gas chambers, since not all the incoming prisoners were done away with, at least not at once, because some of them were needed to labor in the IG Farben chemical works and Krupp's factory until they became exhausted and were ready for the quote-unquote final solution. And they're working with coal, turning it into gasoline. Good chance of being exposed to hydrocarbons and all sorts of weird carcinogens and shit. We had 2 SS doctors on duty. Remember this Green Book of Employment Safety Regulations for Industrial Establishments in Ontario? Don't apply here. But remembering shit like this is why they came up with rules like that. Remember the workers, the dead workers, 2 a day? We had 2, that's 2 a day in a so-called free country. We had 2 SS doctors on duty at, no, think of this, you can choose to work or not work. 2 a day? I think I might choose taking the day off. But 99% of fatal accidents happen in the home or something. I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do here. We had 2 SS doctors on duty at Auschwitz to examine the incoming transports of prisoners. These would be marched by one of the doctors who would make spot decisions as they walked by. First glance, eh? Those who were fit to work were sent into the camp. Others were sent immediately to the extermination plants. Children of tender years were invariably exterminated, since by reason of their youth they were unable to work. I can tell you, growing up in Toronto, that's not true. Because 50 years before this, Toronto's economy ran on child labor. We'll get to that another day. Always Herr Hoes kept making improvements in the art of mass killing. Still another improvement we made over Treblinka was that at Treblinka, the victims almost always knew that they were to be exterminated. Almost always knew. While at Auschwitz, we endeavored to fool the victims into thinking that they were to go through a delousing process. Really? Of course, frequently they realized our true intentions, and we sometimes had riots and difficulties. Very frequently, women would hide their children under the clothes, but of course, when we found them, we would send the children in to be exterminated. We were required to carry out these exterminations in secrecy, but of course the foul, nauseating stench from the continuous burning of bodies permeated the entire area, and all of the people living in the surrounding communities knew that exterminations were going on at Auschwitz.
And into the evening, the rain will continue into Wednesday as well as Thursday. For Tuesday, Wednesday as well as Thursday, the high temperature will be right around 10 degrees.
Oh.
Our overnight low tonight is 3 degrees.
And right now in downtown
Benzene.
Toronto, we have an overcast sky. It's 9 degrees. Similar conditions at Pearson Airport and 10 degrees. Coming up at the top of the hour, the latest on Ontario's education minister announcing the province is extending the closure of publicly funded schools. They're set to be shut down until at least May 31st. Stephen Lecce says there's a chance it could be extended again if the pandemic continues. Our Zahir Hashimi will have all the details at 7 o'clock. 680 News Time, 6:54.
This extended forecast is brought to you by Dynamic Funds. Research shows that investors who work with an advisor accumulate 3.9 times more assets than those who don't. Advice matters, now more than ever. Learn more.
Sometimes, hosts explained, a few quote-unquote special prisoners, apparently Russian prisoners of war, were simply killed by injections of benzene. That's gasoline. Oh, on the cigarette packs, it says it. The carbon monoxide, tar, nicotine, and benzene. Why is that in your Virginia blend cigarettes? It's not in Canadian blend cigarettes. Oh, they changed the law. That's not on the packs anymore. You still have to put the warnings on, but you're not allowed to put the chemical analysis. What the fuck? Because you can't get Canadian blend cigarettes in the store anymore. You can't find them. It's all Virginia blend. Canadian blend, of course, meaning a legal term, meaning 100% additive free. Protected term. Our doctors, he added, had orders to write ordinary death certificates and could put down any reason at all for the cause of death. Usually, quote-unquote heart disease was written down. Kogan himself in Buchenwald for 8 years gives samples. Quote, patient died after prolonged suffering on blank at blank o'clock. Cause of death, cardiac weakness complicated by pneumonia. End quote. Such formalities were dispensed with at Auschwitz when the massive gassings began. Often the day's dead were not even counted. To Host's blunt description may be added a brief composite picture of death and disposal at Auschwitz as testified to by surviving inmates and jailers. The quote-unquote selection, which decided which Jews were to be worked and which ones immediately gassed, took place at the railroad siding as soon as the victims had been unloaded from the freight cars in which they had been locked without food or water for as much as a week. For many came from such distant parts as France, Holland, and Greece. Afro-Dutch. Though there were heartrending scenes as wives were torn away from husbands and children from parents, none of the captives, as hosts testified and survivors agree, realized just what was in store for them. In fact, some of them were given pretty picture postcards marked Walled C, quote-unquote Walled C, to be signed and sent back home to their relatives with a printed inscription saying, "We are doing very well here. We have work and we are well treated. We await your arrival." The gas chambers themselves and the adjoining crematoria, viewed from a short distance, were not sinister-looking places at all. I bet they look like bread ovens or something, right? It was impossible to make them out for what they were. Oh, I would have known. Over them were well-kept lawns with flower borders. Oh yeah, that's a dead giveaway. The signs at the entrances merely said baths. The unsuspecting Jews thought they were simply being taken to the baths for the delousing which was customary at all camps, and taken to the accompaniment of sweet music! Exclamation point.
Followed by double-digit growth next year. But this comes as traders are preparing for the latest interest rate decision from the U.S.
Double-digit growth next year based on what?
Wednesday. As for the TSX, it's coming off a weekly gain around 0.2%. On Friday, it was higher by 1.1% to 14,420. And the energy sector is going to be a focus for investors this week, as we're expected to get first quarter results from Husky Energy and Cenovus Energy on Wednesday. Now, with oil prices taking a beating due to the coronavirus pandemic, we've seen both companies reduce their capital spending and production, and Cenovus has actually suspended its dividend earlier this month. At the close on Bay Friday, we had Husky Energy down by 5.2% to $3.61. As for Cenovus, it lost 2.2% to $4.28. Now, keeping an eye on oil and electronic trade, it's down by 2.1% to $16.58 a barrel. It's coming off a weekly loss around 32%, its biggest weekly percentage loss ever. Canadian dollar on Friday fell by 12/100ths of a cent, closing at 70.94 cents US. And checking gold and electronic trade, it's up by 0.2% to 1,739. At the Business Center, I'm Carl Garnash.
If you're hearing this, you're staying in and keeping your distance. or you're going to work and providing all Canadians with the essential.
For there was light music, an orchestra of, quote, young and pretty girls, all dressed in white blouses and navy blue skirts, end quote, as one survivor remembered, had been formed from among the inmates. While the selection was being made for the gas chambers, this unique musical ensemble played gay tunes from The Merry Widow and Tales of Hoffmann, Nothing Solemn and Somber from Beethoven. The death marches, it's a go train. The death marches at Auschwitz were sprightly and merry tunes straight out of Viennese and Parisian operetta. To such music, recalling as it did happier and more frivolous times, the men, women, and children were led into the quote-unquote bathhouses, where they were told to undress preparatory to taking a quote-unquote shower. Sometimes they were even given towels. Once they were inside the quote-unquote shower room, and perhaps this was the first moment that they may have suspected something was amiss, for as many as 2,000 of them were packed into the chamber like sardines, making it difficult to take a bath. Yeah, we've been canning sardines a long time. Used to be little kids that packed. Toronto labor. Oh, never mind. The massive door was slid shut, locked, and hermetically sealed. Up above, where the well-groomed lawn and flower beds almost concealed the mushroom-shaped lids of vents that ran up from the hall of death, orderlies, stood ready to drop into them the amethyst blue crystals of hydrogen cyanide, or Zyklon B, which originally had been commercially manufactured as a strong disinfectant, and for which, as we have seen, Herr Hoes had with so much pride found a new use. Herr's brother, is it not? Surviving prisoners watching from blocks nearby remembered how for a time the signal for the orderlies to pour the crystals down the vents was given by a Sergeant Maul. Some German, na gib ihnen schon zu fressen. All right, give him something to chew on. He would laugh and the crystals would be poured through the openings, which were then sealed.
Answering questions from 680 News listeners, Mayor John Tory says how exactly the city will ease back to normal life will be made clear this week. Lead basketball analyst Adrian Wojnarowski sounding off on the thought of some NBA teams opening up their facilities later this week, and the New Orleans Saints now have a crowded quarterback position. Sports at 15. Investors are preparing for earnings from Canada's largest railroad, and we could see some selling to kick off the week as U.S. stock futures remain in the red. Business at 26.
News time, 7:01.
It's time for traffic.
Black at both ends and clear in the middle. What the
Here's
fuck?
Rob Andrews.
This report is brought to
I got
you
some type
by
of albinism,
GP Bikes. We have construction on the northbound 404 from the 407 to north of Highway 7. The HOV and 3 left lanes are blocked. But looking at our cameras, not really causing much of a delay, really, as you make your way through there. Overall, our major routes are lightly traveled. Rest of the 404 DVP in both directions, a light drive. Same story with the Gardner, the QEW. No recent troubles. Looking at the 401 eastbound, that is in good shape. Eastbound 407, east of Yonge to east of the 404. Still have only the left lane getting by because of some construction. Looking at the westbound 401, that's in great shape. Northbound Allen ramp to westbound 401 collectors, that's closed for construction, but that's really it for the westbound 401. Off of our major routes, westbound Lawrence at the DVP, we still have a couple of right lanes blocked from an earlier vehicle fire. We had an earlier collision northbound Bellamy approaching Lawrence. That has cleared. And at last check, Bloomington was closed both directions, Woodbine to Warden for fire investigation. Zero HST sale plus up to 60% off. Open online and by phone for easy curbside pickup. Get your new motorcycle with finance rates as low as 0%. GPBikes.com, your power sports authority. Your next report at 7:11 with the forecast, Jason Fraser.
Well, even though some of us are seeing mostly cloudy skies, I can't rule out the possibility of another rain shower impacting our area. Overnight, we'll see clearing skies and temperatures dipping down to the lower end of the single digits. Our overnight low tonight is 3 degrees.
Right now in downtown Toronto, it's an overcast sky and 9 degrees, feeling like 5, and it's 10 degrees at Pearson Airport, also with an overcast sky, feeling like 7. 680 News Time, 7:03.
A major announcement from Ontario's Education Minister today. Public schools in the province will remain closed until the end of May.
Despite the setback, Education Minister Stephen Lecce stressed that all students will be able to finish the school year online and graduate if they're eligible. 680's Sahara Hashimi reports.
The Ford government announced that all public schools in Ontario will remain closed until at least May 31st. Education Minister Stephen Lecce says the decision is based on advice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health. Now, students can continue their classes online and will be able to graduate if they meet the criteria. And to the families who need it, Lecce stressed again that the government is giving out iPads.
We understand that in the virtual and distant learning environment, the technology can be a really important aid, and we want to mitigate from the differential of experience. There are some people who have access and those that do not.
Lecce says the extension will give officials time to study updated modeling and that their number one priority will always be the safety of students. No word yet on when classes will be back in session, but he says it could be at some point this year. It all depends on how the pandemic unfolds. I'm Seher Hashimi.
680 News Time 7:04. Some positive news from the Ministry of Health today, now reporting the province has seen more recoveries from COVID-19 than new cases. That progress is thanks largely in part to frontline care workers who are up in arms after discovering not all covered under the new pandemic pay increase. 680's Michelle Mackey reports.
The president of Peel Paramedic Union, Dave Wakely, says it isn't about the money, it's about the lack of acknowledgement, but notes their services will not stop.
Paramedics are always going to be there for people, and it's going to be more than an act of disrespect on behalf of the provincial government to make us stop doing our job.
A spokesperson for the health minister says in part, we're continuing to consult with our healthcare partners to address questions and determine who might meet the criteria for pandemic pay. Meantime, Ontario is reporting 437 new cases of COVID-19, the lowest daily increase in over a week. And today marks the first time there have been more reported recoveries than new cases. I'm Michelle Mackey.
680 News Time 7:05. Breaking news from North York. A man is fighting for his life following a shooting. Toronto police received the call just after 6 this evening saying a man had been shot at Jane Street and Shepherd Avenue West. Constable Alex Lee spoke with 680 News.
Our officers arrived within minutes to the location, and
within minutes. When seconds counts, they're only 22 minutes away.
Paramedics say the man is in life-threatening condition, and he was taken to hospital with an emergency run. Police are on site investigating. Stay with 680 News for more on this developing story.
Happening now, York Regional Police say a massive fire has broken out at a garden center, causing a visual distraction for drivers. Fire crews responded to calls of a structural fire on Bloomington Road in the Woodbine and Warden area this afternoon. Several callers into the 680 newsroom have reported large clouds of black smoke that can be seen off of Highway 401. There are no reported injuries at this time. Road police say Bloomington Road remains closed between Woodbine and Warden for the investigation.
You're listening to 680 News. The City of Toronto would like to remind residents that maintain physical distancing while this pandemic continues. 533 tickets have been issued since the beginning of the month. Yesterday, the city received 21 complaints related to non-essential businesses staying open. According to a news release from the city, there are currently 4,798 cases of COVID-19 in Toronto, and 274 people have died. The city still stressing only go out if you absolutely have to.
680 News Time 7:07. We carried it live on 680 News this morning, an exclusive interview with John Tory. The mayor answered your questions, including how long people will need to work from home. 680 Stuart McGinn joins us now with a recap.
If you have a good work from home setup, the mayor says it might be a good idea to get comfortable.
I won't be surprised if we say, well, look, not everybody can suddenly pile back on the subway and go to work on the same day.
Answering questions from 680 News listeners, John Tory said the city has no plans to increase fines for anyone not following physical distancing regulations.
We're not making any changes to it at the moment, and we just hope people don't get the ticket because they get it, that they're not supposed to be close to anybody else.
The mayor said it's crucial to do everything we can to avoid a second wave of COVID-19, meaning there's no way anytime soon thousands can pile into Rogers Centre to watch a Blue Jays game. I'm Stuart McGinn.
The OPP say they have no idea why there are people pretending to be police officers and stopping motorists to check their essential worker status during the pandemic. Wellington County OPP has released information about 2 suspects, including one who has already been arrested and charged. The OPP advising the public that police are not conducting random traffic stops to check motorists' work status during the pandemic. Officers say if you feel you're being stopped by someone impersonating a police officer and fear for your safety, call 911 and provide your location.
680 News Times. Wait. The pandemic is not getting in the way of development in the city of Brampton. The city's planning and developing department has adapted the way it does things by taking applications electronically and conducting late-stage inspections virtually. Some of the big projects that have been able to continue because of the change in the way the city does business include a building permit for Maple Lodge Farms for a project that will create 250 new jobs and ongoing planning for the Shoppers World redevelopment, which proposes to build more than 5,000 residential units. Since the application process switched to online in mid-March, the city of Brampton has received 25 new development applications. Tim Hortons is launching a campaign to support those affected by the heartbreaking events in Nova Scotia. The Nova Scotia Strong Donut is now on sale in that province, and 100% of proceeds are being donated to the Canadian Red Cross. Canadian hockey stars Sidney Crosby and Nathan McKinnon have partnered with Tim Hortons to help spread awareness.
As proud Nova Scotians, we are incredibly saddened by the tragedy that took place in our community.
To show our support, we've partnered with Tim Hortons to give every Canadian way to show theirs.
The donut goes on sale across Canada starting on Wednesday.
We have an update now from the Jane and Shepherd shooting we just reported on. The male victim has now passed away in hospital. The homicide unit has taken over the investigation and officers are still on site. Anyone with information is asked to contact police. Stay with 680 for more on this developing story.
Breaking news from your new world. We're in this together. 680 News.
Now time for the 680 News gas price update. Empro says the price of gas won't be changing at midnight. It's set to hold at 82.9 cents a liter at most GTA stations. Traffic and weather together next.
680 News Time 710.
In times like these, shouldn't your money work even harder for you? We think so. That's why at Duca Credit Union, you get no-fee checking accounts. You also get...
I'm gonna light another fucking cigarette. Fuck you. He would laugh, and the crystals would be poured through the openings, which were then sealed. Through heavy glass portholes, the executioners could watch what happened. The naked prisoners below would be looking up at the showers from which no water spouted, or perhaps at the floor, wondering why there were no drains. It took some moments for the gas to have much effect. But soon the inmates became aware that it was issuing from the perforations in the vents. It was then that they usually panicked, crowding away from the pipes, and finally stampeding towards the huge metal door where, as Reitlinger puts it, quote, they piled up in one blue, clammy, blood-spattered pyramid, clawing and mauling each other even in death. "20 or 30 minutes later, when the huge mass of naked flesh had ceased to writhe, pumps drew out the poisonous air, the large door was opened, and the men of the Sonderkommando took over. These were Jewish male inmates who were promised their lives and adequate food in return for performing the most ghastly job of all. They were inevitably and regularly dispatched in the gas chambers and replaced by new teams who continued to meet the same fate." That's what you get for selling out. The SS wanted no survivors to tell tales. Protected with gas masks and rubber boots and wielding hoses, they went to work. Reitlinger has described it. Their first task was to remove the blood and defecations before dragging the clawing dead apart with nooses and hooks, the prelude to the ghastly search for gold, and the removal of teeth and hair which were regarded by the Germans as strategic materials. Then the journey by lift or rail wagon to the furnaces, the mill that ground the clinker to fine ash, and the truck that scattered the ashes in the stream of the Sola. So yeah, the bones don't burn. You have to grind them up. There was testimony at the Nuremberg trials that the ashes were sometimes sold as fertilizer. One Danzig firm, according to a document offered by the Russian prosecution, constructed an electrically heated tank for making soap out of human fat. Its quote-unquote recipe called for, quote, 12 pounds of human fat, 10 quarts of water, and 8 ounces to a pound of caustic soda, all boiled for 2 or 3 hours and then cooled, end quote. There had been, the record showed, some lively competition among German businessmen to procure orders for building these death and disposal contraptions and for furnishing the lethal blue crystals. The firm of I.A. Toff and Sons of Erfurt
manufacturers of heating equipment, won out in its bid for the crematoria at Auschwitz. There's no apostrophes anywhere in this. The story of its business enterprise was revealed in a voluminous correspondence found in the records of the camp. A letter from the firm dated February 12, 1943 gives the tenor. I'll get to that in a second.
Brian Clark, ABC News.
Still to come on 680 News, how Canadian officials are handling a large COVID-19 outbreak at a federal prison. 680 News Time, 7:13.
The early bird deadline in the Princess Margaret Home Lottery is in 5 days. Don't miss our world-famous $1.5 million early.
A letter from the firm dated February 12, 1943 gives the tenor. To the Central Construction Office of the SS and Police, Auschwitz, subject crematoria 2 and 3 for the camp. We acknowledge receipt of your order for 5 triple furnaces, including 2 electric elevators for raising the corpses and 1 emergency elevator. A practical installation for stoking coal was also ordered, and 1 for transporting ashes. The correspondence of 2 other firms engaged in the crematorium business popped up at the Nuremberg trials. The disposal of the corpses at a number of Nazi camps had attracted commercial competition. One of the oldest German companies in the field offered its drawings for crematoria to be built at a large SS camp in Belgrade. For putting the bodies into the furnace, we suggest simply a metal fork moving on cylinders. Each furnace will have an oven measuring only 24 by 18 inches, as coffins will not be used. For transporting the corpses from the storage points to the furnaces, we suggest using light carts on wheels, and we enclose diagrams of these drawn to scale. We suggest. Another firm, C.H. Corey, also sought the Belgrade business, emphasizing its great experience in this field since it had already constructed 4 furnaces for Dachau and 5 for Lublin, which it said had given, quote, full satisfaction in practice. End quote. Oh, I missed a part here. The ashes in the stream of the Sola. There was testimony at the Nuremberg. Oh, I did read that. The Sola, right? Okay. No, I didn't miss it. Full satisfaction in practice. Following our verbal discussion regarding the delivery of equipment of simple construction for the burning of bodies, we're submitting plans for our perfected cremation ovens which operate with coal and which have hitherto given full satisfaction. We suggest 2 crematoria furnaces for the building plan, but we advise you to make further inquiries to make sure that 2 ovens will be sufficient for your requirements. Where's the phone? I'll get to you. We guarantee the effectiveness of the cremation ovens as well as their durability, the use of the best material, and a faultless workmanship. Awaiting your further word, we will be at your service. Heil Hitler, C.H. Corey, GmbH, which is like German for like Inc. or Limited or whatever. In the end, even the strenuous efforts of German free enterprise using the best material and providing faultless workmanship proved inadequate for burning the corpses. The well-constructed crematoria fell far behind at a number of camps, but especially at Auschwitz in 1944, when as many as 6,000 bodies, Host put it at as many as 16,000, had to be burned daily. For instance, in 46 days during the summer of 1944, between 250,000 and 300,000 Hungarian Jews alone were done to death at this camp. Done to death at this camp. Even the gas chambers fell behind, and resort was made to mass shootings in the Einsatzkommando style. The bodies were simply thrown into ditches and burned, many of them only partly, and then earth was bulldozed over them. The camp commanders complained toward the end that the crematoria had proved not only inadequate, but uneconomical. The Zyklon B crystals that had killed the victims in the first place were furnished by 2 German firms which had acquired the patent from IG Farben. The coal to gas people. These were Tesch and Stabenow of Hamburg and Dijesh of Dessau, the former supplying 2 tons of cyanide crystals a month and the latter 3/4 of a ton. The bills of lading for the deliveries showed up at Nuremberg. The directors of both concerns contended that they had sold their product merely for fumigation purposes and were unaware that lethal use had been made of it, but this defense did not hold up. Letters were found from Tesch and Stabenow offering not only to supply the gas crystals, but also the ventilating and heating equipment for extermination chambers. Besides, the inimitable Hoss, who once he started to confess went the limit, testified that the directors of the Tesh company could not have helped knowing how their product was being used since they furnished enough to exterminate a couple of million people. A British military court was convinced of this at the trial of the two partners, Bruno Tesch and Karl Weinbacher, who were sentenced to death in 1946 and hanged. The director of the second firm, Dr. Gerard Peters of Dessau, got off more lightly. A German court sentenced him to 5 years imprisonment. Before the post-war trials in Germany, it had been generally believed that the mass killings were exclusively the work of a relatively few fanatical SS leaders, but the records of the courts leave no doubt of the complicity of a number of German businessmen, not only the Krupps and the directors of the IG Farm and Chemical Trust, but smaller entrepreneurs, is a French word, who outwardly must have seemed to be the most prosaic and decent of men, pillars, like good businessmen everywhere, of their communities. How many hapless innocent people, mostly Jews, but including a fairly large number of others, especially Russian prisoners of war, were slaughtered at the one camp of Auschwitz? The exact number will never be known. Hoss himself in his affidavit gave an estimate of 2.5 million victims executed and exterminated by gassing and burning, and at least another 500,000 who succumbed to starvation and disease, making a total of about 3 million, end quote. Later, at his own trial in Warsaw, he reduced the figure to 1,135,000. The Soviet government, which investigated the camp after it was overrun by the Red Army in January 1945, put the figure at 4 million. Reitlinger, on the basis you lost me, which one that guy is. Reitlinger, on the basis of his own exhaustive study, doubts that the number gassed at Auschwitz was, quote, even as high as 750,000, end quote. He estimates that about 600,000 died in the gas chambers, to which he adds, quote, the unknown proportion, end quote, of some 300,000 or more, quote unquote, missing, who were shot or who died of starvation and disease. By any estimate, the figure is considerable.
Many officials facing criminal charges. Back in November, Prime Minister Netanyahu was indicted on corruption charges. The emergency government will be led by Prime Minister for 18 months before Benny Gantz of the centrist Blue and White Party takes over for the next 18 months. And your governor Andrew Cuomo says 367 more people have died from COVID-19 in the state. Cuomo called the number horrific, but it was less than half the daily number recorded at the height of the health crisis. He also says other virus-related numbers continue to drop.
Overall hospitalization rate is down. The number of intubations is down. Even the number of new COVID cases is down. Still not good. Still 1,000 new COVID cases yesterday.
The deaths recorded yesterday include 349 patients who died in hospital and 18 individuals who died in nursing homes. 680 News Time, 7:21. It's time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Barb Andrews.
This report brought to you by Queensway Hyundai. Looking at the eastbound 401, lightly traveled, no issues through the 427, through the 400 to be on the 404. Some good news eastbound 407, east of Yonge to the 404. Construction there has wrapped up. Lanes are open again. Westbound 401, we have the ramp from northbound Allen to the westbound 401 collectors closed for construction. That's pretty much it for the westbound 401. Looking at the 400 southbound approaching King Road, we do have some construction blocking up 2 right lanes. Southbound 404 DVP in good shape. Same story with the Gardner QBW.
The bodies were burned, but the gold fillings in the teeth remained, and these were retrieved from the ashes if they had not already been yanked out by special squads working over the clammy piles of corpses. Sometimes they were pulled out before the victims were slain. A secret report of the German warden of the prison at Minsk disclosed that after he had commandeered the services of a Jewish dentist, all the Jews, quote, had their gold bridgework crowns and fillings pulled or broken out. This happens always 1 to 2 hours before the special action, end quote. The warden noted that of 516 German and Russian Jews executed at his prison during a 6-week period in the spring of 1943, some 336 had the gold yanked from their teeth. Like 70%, right? 70% of them had gold teeth. That's an interesting statistic. The gold was melted down and shipped along with other valuables snatched from the condemned Jews to the Reichsbank, where under a secret agreement between Himmler and the bank's president, Dr. Walter Funk, it was deposited to the credit of the SS in an account given the cover name of Max Heiliger. This prize booty from the extermination camps included, besides gold from dentures, gold watches, earrings, bracelets, rings, necklaces, and even spectacles frames, for the Jews had been encouraged to bring all their valuables with them for the promised quote-unquote resettlement. They do that to us too, eh? There were also great stocks of jewelry, especially diamonds, and much silverware, and there were great wads of banknotes.
Many more are in.
Oh, the workers.
Millwrights Local 2309 points out that April 28th is the International Day of Mourning, a day for unions, workers, and their families and friends to remember those killed or injured. On April 28th, let's pause to remember those lost or hurt while working and commit to a safer workplace. A message from Millwrights Local 2309 Toronto, a workforce dedicated to your needs.
Darren and Moe's Pay Your Bills contest
On 98.1
CHFI.
Great wads of banknotes. The Reichsbank, in fact, was overwhelmed by the Max Heiliger deposits. With its vaults filled to overflowing as early as 1942, the bank's profit-minded directors sought to turn the holdings into cold cash by disposing of them through the municipal pawn shops. One letter from the Reichsbank to the Berlin Municipal Pawn Shop dated September 15th, it's 1942, right? Speaks of a quote-unquote second shipment and begins, quote, "We submit to you the following valuables with the request for the best possible utilization," end quote. The list is long and itemized and includes 154 gold watches, 1,601 gold earrings, that's an odd number, 132 diamond rings, 784 silver pocket watches, and, quote, 160 diverse dentures, partly of gold. So the only odd number is the number of earrings. That's weird. By the beginning of 1944, the Berlin pawn shop itself was overwhelmed by the flow of these stolen goods and informed the Reichsbank it could accept no more. When the Allies overran Germany, they discovered in some abandoned salt mines where the Nazis had hidden part of their records and booty, enough left over from the Max Heiliger account to fill 3 huge vaults in the Frankfurt branch of the Reichsbank. Did the bankers know the sources of these unique quote-unquote deposits? The manager of the precious metals department of the Reichsbank deposed at Nuremberg that he and his associates began to notice that many shipments came from Lublin and Auschwitz. We all knew that these places were the sites of concentration camps. It was in the 10th delivery in November 1943 that dental gold appeared. The quantity of dental gold became unusually great. At Nuremberg, the notorious Oswald Pohl, now 10. Now remember, that's 14 or 15 months later, the only 10 shipments. That's weird. The Germans are so orderly, right? Why not just monthly or weekly or something? At Nuremberg, the notorious Oswald Pohl, chief of the economic... where was that? We all knew that these places were the sites of concentration camps. It was in the 10th delivery in November 1943 that dental gold appeared. The quantity of dental gold became unusually great. At Nuremberg, the notorious Oswald Pohl, chief of the economic office of the SS, who handled the transactions for his organization, emphasized that Dr. Funk and the officials and directors of the Reichsbank knew very well the origins of the goods they were trying to pawn. He explained in some detail, quote, the business deal between Funk and the SS concerning the delivery of valuables of dead Jews to the Reichsbank, end quote. He remembered a conversation with the bank's vice president, Dr. Emil Pohl. In this conversation, no doubt remained that the objects to be delivered came from Jews who had been killed in concentration camps. The objects in question were rings, watches, eyeglasses, gold bars, wedding rings, brooches, pins, gold fillings, and other valuables. Once, Pohl related, after an inspection tour through the vaults of the Reichsbank where the valuables, quote, from the dead Jews, end quote, were inspected, Dr. Funk tendered the party a pleasant dinner in which the conversation turned around the unique origins of the booty. Dr. Funk was sentenced to life imprisonment at Nuremberg.
Electronic trade, taking a look at oil, it's down by 2.2% to $16.56 a barrel. And this comes after it comes off its biggest weekly percentage loss ever. It fell around 32% in a week, where we actually saw oil prices turn negative for the first time ever. As for gold and electronic trade, it's up by 0.3% to 1,741, and the precious metals coming off a weekly gain of more than 2%. Now, on Friday, we did have the Canadian dollar down by 12/100ths of a cent, finishing at 70.94 cents US. And Google parent Alphabet is expected to be a focus for investors this week, as the tech giant's earnings are also expected Tuesday. But this comes following some recent reports that the company is going to cut its marketing budget and is implementing a hiring freeze for full-time and contract workers. Alphabet at the close on Friday was up by 0.4% to $1,276.60. At the Business Center, I'm Carl Garnash.
You've suffered from anxiety and depression during this pandemic, and now your claim for disability is denied. My name is Aaron Waxman, and during this pandemic, we are open and working for our clients from our homes. If your disability claim is denied for any reason, call me at 416-661-4878 or pound LTD on your cell phone. And before you call, you should always remember that there are no bad questions. 416-661-4878 or pound LTD.
You'll hear it here
First, breaking news when it happens.
on 680 News.
Arrive Alive is 30, and over the years, we've had a lot of support from people in the community who have shared our message. Like Shania, one thing I will get serious about is impaired driving. Plan ahead, take a cab, or stay overnight. And Wendell.
Whether you're out in the town or just hanging out with friends, drink responsibly. Always have a plan for a safe ride home for yourself, your family, and your friends.
Thanks, you two. Just like Shania and Wendell, you can support sober driving. Learn more at arrivealive.org.
Right
Clear
now,
airs,
Toronto,
man.
overcast
Clear.
9 degrees, 680 News, the CFTR AM Toronto. Listen 3, 4, 5 times a day and always be in the know. You can also find out how to hear us on our smart speaker phone or HD radio at 680news.com/listen. 680 News time. 7:30.
Number one for news in Toronto. This is 680 News.
I'm not want to read no more.
Good evening. This is Sunday, April the 26th. I'm Veronica Thor.
And I'm Eden Tabata. Here's what's making news this hour.
I'm sorry, parents, but you might be stuck with your kids for a little while longer. The Ford government announced that all publicly funded schools will remain closed until at least May 31st.
Not everyone is happy about the temporary pandemic pay increase for frontline workers. Paramedics say they're not included.
Answering your questions, Mayor John Tory talks struggles for renters and how to avoid a second wave of COVID-19.
Breaking news from North York. Toronto police say a man has died following a shooting in the Jane and Shepherd area.
We're going from a number one overall pick to now joining a division rival. Jameis Winston picks a new team, and the NBA could be reopening certain facilities Friday. Sports at 45.
Trying to keep the magic alive at home, Disney's literally going back to the drawing board, and investors could hit the sell button to begin the week as U.S. stock futures remain in the red. Business at 56.
680 News time, 7:31.
It's time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Barb Andrews. This report brought to you by your local Ontario Subaru dealers. Northbound 404 from the 407 to north of